You can't take one of these on the go, man. You gotta have power. Portable power. Well, kiddies, the Game Boy. Love the system. I know some of you do as well. It's a great 8-bit system, and sometimes the games might be a little harder to get these days. Then we're going to talk about the Game Boy and its beautiful games after this. Well, the NES lasted about a decade with the release of the top loader. We got ours in '96. With over 200 million units sold worldwide and a lifespan spanning from the late 80s to about 2008, the Game Boy is one of Nintendo's most successful consoles, let alone handheld systems.
Before we begin, just a small disclaimer first. We are only going to discuss the North American releases and mostly the North American games. Both Japan and Europe may differ from what we discussed today. Now on to the rest of the video. The Game Boy was released in North America during the summer of 1989. The cost was between $89.99 and $100. The average Game Boy game retail cost is between $30 to $50, depending on the game. Interestingly enough, NES games also range between the $30 to $50 range when they first came out in the late 80s, early 90s. This also depended on the game, although some people have claimed upwards of $70 for games. I remember vividly the $25 to $50 price ticker, but that was my region, the Pacific Northwest. It might have been different in your area in the 80s or 90s. The Game Boy was created by Nintendo Research and Development 1, the team behind the Game & Watch series and several arcade games like Donkey Kong and its sequels. The Game Boy was either bundled with the game Tetris or just a standalone unit, just the Game Boy itself. Later releases would include different box styles and be bundled with other games. Like this example, it was bundled with Killer Instinct. I'll show you another one later on in the episode.
I got introduced to the Game Boy by my friend Qua on a camping trip. I remember him bringing the Game Boy and bringing a couple games. I think he brought Double Dragon and WWF Superstars. I was hooked, and I couldn't wait to get one of these myself.
You insert a game, also called Nintendo Game Pack or just a portable game pack back in the day, into the slot in the back of the unit. On top of the Game Boy is the on and off switch. The on and off switch includes a physical lockout mechanism to prevent a game from getting dislodged while the unit is on. Ooh, look, here comes the Nintendo logo coming down the screen. Speaking of the screen size is about 2.5 inches or 2.6 inches.
This little guy is heavy.
It took 4 AA batteries. The claim was batteries should last 10 hours. Yeah, right, more like 8 if you're lucky. It drains faster than playing Tetris on max when your eyes are closed. The level will be over before you know it. 2 to 3 hours max in reality. Just enough time for a drive to the beach. There is a rechargeable battery pack. It doesn't drain as fast as it should, and I emphasize should. Lasts about 10 hours. It too is a beast. It's sort of heavy. You can clip it on the go and walk in game. We didn't have the problem of texting and driving in 1989. Just don't walk into the street while playing the Game Boy. Unlike the Sega Game Gear, which was in color, the Game Boy isn't in color, it's monochrome. The Game Boy's greenish-yellow screen stands out among its rivals. I'm not sure if that's a bad thing or a good thing. The Game Boy Advance plays in black and white. This looks so much clearer and better. The original model, you can change the density of the screen, making it brighter or darker. And sometimes that was helpful in low light settings. The Game Boy itself does not have backlight capabilities. There are other devices made to help brighten up the screen. The Game Boy itself is fashioned as a big NES controller. There are the exact same buttons between both and they function the same way. There is the D-pad, select, start, B and A. You pick up an NES controller and it feels very similar to playing a Game Boy. The Game Boy is just bigger and heavier. DMG stands for Dot Matrix Game. These are the original Game Boy games and they are labeled as such.
You will notice it says DMG. That stands for Dot Matrix Game.
Unlike the NES, which has a region lockout chip, the Game Boy is
region free, so you can play games from Japan and other countries.
Yes, the Game Boy is region free. On a Game Boy cart or game pack, you'll have its region listed. Here's an example, DMG SS USA. Solar Striker. This is the NTSC release. This is a European game, DMG SC UKV, Solomon's Club. And here's the North American version. Oh, and here's my Burger Time from China, DMG 129CHN. They all play on the Game Boy. The Game Boy plays in mono. It only has one speaker, but due to its headphone jack, you can't play in stereo if you use headphones or external speakers. Here is the volume control. It goes up and down. In 1995, Nintendo rebranded the Game Boy with several different colored Game Boy models, advertising them as Play It Loud. Besides the different color cases, the Game Boy is built the exact same way as it did in 1989. After the Play It Loud series, Nintendo released the Game Boy Pocket. Nintendo added several improvements to the Pocket. The body was less thick, it took fewer batteries, and the screen was true black and white. The biggest improvement was the screen size. It was bigger than the Game Boy. Nintendo finally dived into the handheld color market with the Game Boy Color. This newest addition to the Game Boy family was released in 1998. It's an improvement over the Game Boy and the Game Boy Pocket, because now games can be played in color. Although the screen size is smaller than the Game Boy Pocket. The Game Boy Color takes two AA batteries, and the batteries didn't drain as fast as the original. It was backwards compatible, so it played both Game Boy and its own Game Boy Color games. It was discontinued from stores in 2003. The Game Boy Advance hit retail shelves in 2001. It had its own library of games, Game Boy Advance or just GBA, but it played both Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles. An improved model to the Game Boy Advance was released 3 years later in 2004, called the Game Boy Advance SP. This was an easier console to transport, and it was easy to carry in your pocket. I liked the design. The Game Boy Micro was released in 2005. It was by far the smallest of the Game Boy consoles. It cannot play Game Boy or Game Boy Color games. It only played Game Boy Advance titles. It was the last of the Game Boy line, and it ended in 2008. In 1994, the best video game attachment was released for the Super Nintendo, and that was the Super Game Boy. Retailed for about $60. It allowed gamers to play Game Boy games on a Super Nintendo. The Super Game Boy cannot play Game Boy Color games, even though it slides in perfectly and looks like it will fit, and it'll tell you this. Just DMG and some Game Boy Color games. Those black cartridges, they are also Game Boy Color and Game Boy games. It was a great add-on for the Super Nintendo. The Super Game Boy does play games a little faster, and so does its audio, about 2% difference. By using the Super Game Boy, you can change the background of your play screen. Some games with the Super Game Boy logo were given this special treatment and demonstrated some really neat effects and surprises. The Game Boy version of Space Invaders allowed players to play both the Super Nintendo version of the game as well as a colored version of the Game Boy game. Super Game Boy! Now you're playing portable power on super power. Now satisfied with the Super Game Boy? But you have a GameCube? Well, I recommend the Game Boy Player. It plays Game Boy Advance games, original Game Boy games, and even Game Boy Color games. It is the whole package, ready to play all your Game Boy games. Does have one little catch though. Make sure you have the disc. Without it, the Game Boy Player is useless. Remember earlier I talked about a Game Boy I would show you? I was talking about this one. This one was bundled with Super Mario Land 2. This one was a special offer. Well, let's look inside what a Game Boy in the box would look like in its contents. Alright, so here's the Game Boy.
Alright, let's see what else is in here. We got a bunch of stuff. Looks like a sales brochure, probably a Nintendo Power ad. Something else is buried in here. Okay, just like what to do with your Game Boy, important notices. Alright, you got the instruction manual for Super Mario Land 2. An instruction manual for the Game Boy. And what's this? Oh, just another... Oh, yeah. Backside of the box. As you can see, it was bought in 1994. And here's the side of the box. Hey, let's not stop there. Let's look at what a Game Boy box looks like. Alright, this is Revenge of the Gator, a pinball game I'll talk about later in the episode. Here's the top of the box, and here's the back side. Okay. Alright, opening up, here is a clear protectorate with a clamshell protecting the Game Boy game. And this is the instruction manual for Revenge of the Gator. And here's just a little bit what it looks like inside. You see some gameplay stuff and some levels. Oh, this is Kirby Pinball Land. As you see, it has a golden Game Boy seal. And also it has the Player's Choice Million Seller logo by Nintendo. This is the back side of the box, just advertising. This is Donkey Kong. Alright, here's the back side of the box. Okay, inside we're opening it up, and as you can see, it actually has a paper instead of the clear one. Whoa! This is actually kind of cool. This is just a play it loud, just advertising a bunch of games for the Game Boy. It's kind of cool. Okay, wait a minute, there's one more thing, and here is the Donkey Kong instruction manual. Because of the size of the Game Boy game packs, they're just tiny little guys. They're easy to store, and that's one great advantage of collecting for the Game Boy. They're storage savers, and you can collect a lot of them and still have plenty of room for more. A system is only as good as the games you can play, and we're going to talk about the games.
In North America, the Game Boy had 5 launch titles: Alleyway, Baseball, Tetris, Tennis, and Super Mario Land. We'll start with Alleyway. As you see, I'm using the Super Game Boy. It's much more colorful than actually playing on the original hardware. Alleyway is pretty much Breakout with Mario. You clear stages by destroying bricks with using a ball. Truthfully, isn't Breakout a Pong clone? So we have a clone of a clone. There are bonus stages as well. It might cost around $30 to $50 back in 1989, but today it costs just 99 cents loose, and maybe $17 for a CIB copy. These are just estimates, and I'm being pretty generous with my pricing here. Baseball is baseball. It plays very similar to baseball on the NES, although baseball on the Game Boy, in my opinion, is superior to the one on the NES. This is baseball on the NES. As you see, it's a very early release. You choose one of several teams. You play America's pastime. You pitch or hit. Try to get your runners home or get the other team out. On the screen, there are infielders and the batter. The outfielders and infielders move so slow. This is baseball on the Game Boy. The 2 L's in ball are baseball bats. I just noticed that. That's actually pretty clever. It makes the NES title page look very simple. Okay, it is. Baseball on the Game Boy doesn't show much of the fielders at first. It's a close-up of just the pitcher and the batter, plus the back of the umpire's head. The bigger sprites help. When you hit or the opponent hits a ball, you see the rest of the fielders. At least the sprites move faster with more purpose on the Game Boy. The graphics seem updated, which is easy to understand when baseball on the NES was released in '83 or '84, and this came out in 1989. Baseball has 2 modes, USA and Japan. You choose either W Bears, they bat first, or R Eagles, they pitch first. The American or USA mode has Mario and Luigi being on different teams. I don't see much of a difference with the Japan mode, with the exception of being different names on the rosters. There's not much more to say. It's baseball and it's freaking cheap. Just $1 or so loose. Now that's a home run. Tennis, another sports title. Just like baseball, it feels very similar on the Game Boy. Another early black box release, Tennis, came out in 1984 on the Nintendo Entertainment System. You play doubles or singles. Doubles is a two-player mode, where you and your friend play doubles matches against a computer. Mario refs the matches. Is he fair? Does he play favorites? As long as you're not playing against Luigi or one of his many princesses. He looks squished. The crowd in the background is very bland. As for gameplay, it's 8-bit tennis. This is Game Boy's launch title, Tennis. The gameplay is basically the same. It's 8-bit tennis, but on the Game Boy. The court is smaller, yet a better playing field. It has a slight top-down look. Mario looks much better in this version. The tennis players sort of look like kids, but I personally like this look better. They look more cartoonish, and I think it fits for the Game Boy. When seen, the crowd is much more defined. There are animations between sets, which is lacking on the NES. This is the NES set change, and this is the Game Boy's. Once again, the Game Boy outshines the home console release by the way Mario refs the matches. Here, Mario makes a call in the NES. And this is the Game Boy's answer. I feel just like baseball on the Game Boy. The Game Boy version of tennis is the better tennis game of the two. As for price, this is a strange one. Similar to tennis on the NES, it too is going up in price from just a few dollars just a year ago to now over $5 to just under $10. It's tennis. Hey, that was in Mario. See, maybe he does play favorites. Tetris, the classic fast-paced puzzle game. How many of us wasted hours, days, weeks of our lives playing Tetris? It was the original game bundled with the Game Boy. It's simple and addicting. Well, you see there are different shapes of blocks called tetrads that you must place and try to eliminate. You do your best to fit them in the right spots. It takes strategy. The more you eliminate, the higher the score.
Do it for the points.
At first, it starts slow, and eventually the momentum builds, and you need keen eyes and fast reflexes or the screen will fill up to the max and it's game over. And who can forget the music? This catchy tune. Tetris catapulted Game Boy sales. The game was so popular that Nintendo used it in Nintendo World Championship competitions. Well, the NES version, not the Game Boy. Once again, they are very similar, if not the same. The main difference, one's an 8-bit color and the other one lacks it. It's a game that's still very fun, even today. The cost can vary, but usually goes for around $3 to $7. And the last of the Game Boy launch titles. Mario makes many cameos in different launch titles. He's a spotlight hog. He finally gets his very own side-scrolling platformer in Super Mario Land. I know what you're thinking. This shrunken world is Super Mario Land? Yes it is. It's condensed because of the Game Boy screen? I'll admit, I was taken back the first time I saw this too. It was the first of its kind on the Game Boy, so maybe give it a little bit of slack. Besides the weird look of the game, it plays just like Super Mario Bros. Mario eats mushrooms, stomps on Goombas. They sort of look like walking skulls. Even plants appear in this game. Can't forget Bullet Bills. They too look a little off. He is still greedy as ever and collects coins. Don't forget his trademark move of hitting bricks with his head or hand. I always thought it was his head, but I've been told it's his hand. I guess I see it. I guess it's all in one's head what Mario uses to break bricks. Mario still loves pipes in this game. He even gets firepower, except it's more like a cannonball in Super Mario Land. They refer to it as Super Balls in the game's instruction manual. I won't make an inappropriate joke. This is too serious. Okay, sorry, just so funny how serious we're being. Mario Super Balls can go diagonal, and they even collect coins for you. It's useful in spots that Mario can't get to. Starman also makes an appearance. This isn't the Mushroom Kingdom. It's a land called Sarasaza Land. I hope I didn't butcher that. Princess Peach, aka Toadstool, isn't in trouble this time. It's Princess Daisy, her first appearance in a Mario game. Daisy has been held against her will by the mysterious vile space fiend Tatanga! The game plays like Super Mario Bros., but there are major differences besides the strange, smaller look of the sprites of the game. Koopa shells explode when you land on them. There are new villains like bees and spiders, seahorses and phoenixes. There's even a rocket trash can thing. Instead of green mushrooms giving extra lives or 1-ups, in Super Mario Land, they are hearts that give you 1-ups. There are also 2 exits at the end of a level. One is slightly harder to get to. One takes you to a bonus minigame. A ladder is moving quickly up and down on the screen. You stop it, here you can get extra lives or flower power. And the biggest difference between Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario Land is the space shooter levels. In World 2-3, Mario's in a submarine underwater. He's under the sea, under the sea. He's blasting everything that you'll see. In World 4-3, Mario's in a plane having dogfights in the sky. There are 12 levels divided up into 4 worlds or lands. I like the cartoon-style landscapes of some of the levels. In 3-1, I like the Easter Island heads. It's strange and neat, almost childlike. In 2-3,
I see aliens crash.
Some of the enemies are just peculiar. These things, whatever the heck they are, reminds me of a fairy that would be in a Shakespeare play. Take that, Puck. Each world has an end boss. In 1-3, it's a phoenix. You can either defeat the boss with cannonballs or jump on a lever, just like in Super Mario Bros. With Bowser. Unless it's a shooter level, just fire until they're defeated. And just like Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Land has its own Psych-Out. Instead of being in another castle, Daisy turns into a spider or a bug or a squid and they hop away. Come on now, how many times can Mario be duped? He must be the most gullible plumber in the world. Don't be upset, Mario. We still love ya. Overall, Super Mario Land's familiar but stands out on its own. It's not difficult and even new players can pick it up with ease. Hopefully they're familiar with platforming. Mario needs to jump, jump, and jump. Super Mario Land is really short. You can beat it under 30 minutes. It's fun, but a strange addition to the Mario franchise. It was popular at the time of its original release. In fact, I think it sold more copies than Super Mario Bros. 3. I love the shooter levels. They are my favorite in the game. The controls are solid and it's very responsive. Yes, the characters and items are reduced in size, but it's still Super Mario. The soundtrack is also good. Super Mario Land might have cost upwards of $50 in 1989, but today a loose card's just about $5 to $8. For a complete copy is about $25 for a completionist out there. Oh, Daisy! Isn't that just odd? I always thought that was kind of weird. That Mario goes, "Oh, Daisy." Mario keep throwing those super balls.
The original Game Boy had 505 games released for the system, at least in North America. So let's check out some games.
With over 500 titles to choose from, it's a difficult choice to narrow down just a few titles to go over. There are so many great ones and not so many great ones on the Game Boy. What to discuss? There's Penguin Wars, the 1990 Nextsoft release. Originally an arcade game, it was ported to the Game Boy. This is an underrated classic for the system. It's one-on-one animal versus animal, an all-out balloon warfare. Okay, it might be dodgeballs. It's simple, but a lot of fun. How about Balloon Kid? Made by Nintendo and released for the Game Boy in 1990. It plays a lot like Balloon Fight, but this isn't a Joust clone. You're a little girl collecting balloons and avoiding obstacles. The goal is to reach the end of the stage. There is a bonus area, where Pipes borrowed from the Mario universe coughs up balloons. Want a balloon, Alice? They float, Alice. And when you're down here, you'll float too. Or if you want obscure, how about the Uncommon Fish Dude? This is a strange addition to the Game Boy. Originally released in 1991, You are a small fish in big water. You need to eat smaller fish and avoid being eaten yourself. Sticking to an aquatic theme, how about the pricey and rarest Game Boy title, Tailgater? Tailgater was published by Natsume in 1991. You control a little gator called Charlie that uses his tail to attack, hence the name Tailgater. Even if you whip your tail and send those pesky enemies flying, they just respawn. As Charlie, your mission is simple, to open up all these treasure chests in the rooms and find a key to exit the level. Some treasure chests might have other items like bombs or power-ups. Tailgater might be a simple one, but it's an enjoyable game.
The Game Boy also had some great games introduced as long-running series like Pokemon.
Metroid had a direct sequel on the Game Boy, Metroid 2. The Zelda franchise jumps from the home console to the handheld in 1993. Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening is regarded as one of the best Zelda games in the series. It is unique for the fact it's one of the few games not to take place in Hyrule. Another omission from other Zelda games is Zelda herself. She doesn't need to be rescued, nor is she a major plot point. Link's Awakening was given an updated release for the Game Boy Color. It hit shelves in 1998 called Link's Awakening DX.
Ooh, don't get too spooked out.
Not only does this game feature a ghost, it also blows, literally. Bubble Ghost was released for the Game Boy in 1990. It was originally an arcade game from 1987. It was also a French game. Just some side information there for you. Bubble Ghost is a game where a ghost blows a bubble. It's that straightforward. There are obstacles and the goal is to get the bubble to safety unpopped. This little ghost blows around the bubble for about 30 stages, with each stage getting more trickier and more difficult to keep your precious cargo intact. Bubble Ghost is fun, an almost forgotten little game for the original Game Boy. Not the rarest Game Boy game out there, but it isn't that common either. If you do find it at a game store or online, be prepared to spend around $10.
The Fortress of Fear. This is Wizard and Warriors 4, or Chapter X. You're fighting the evil Molokai once again. Graphically, it looks pretty good, especially for a Wizard and Warriors game. I think the platforming works much better on the Game Boy than it does on Iron Sword or Wizard and Warriors 1. And fighting enemies is much easier. The controls are responsive and is pretty functionable. I'll admit, I haven't dived too far into this one. It's challenging. That jump sucks. Sorry, your quest has ended here. Game over. Maybe that's a good thing. On to another game.
Okay, let's discuss Adventures of Star Saver. Released in 1992 and published by Taito. You play the character Max. Aliens have kidnapped you and your sister. Max refuses to become a spy, and they tell
Hit the road, Max. Don't come back no more.
Hit the road, Max. Don't come back no more.
Max is rescued by a sympathetic robot. Together, Max and the mech take on the alien forces. Lost in the vast cosmos, you fight strange enemies while looking for his sister. There are weapon upgrades. If you take damage, one hit usually means you'll lose the mech. You do not want to fight with just Max. He's not the best fighter. I like the controls for the most part. As for graphics, it's not the best looking Game Boy game. Max looks like a cutout character. Still, not much to complain about. The Adventures of Star Saver is a forgotten little game pack from the Game Boy library. It's uncommon, and a loose copy can go upwards of $20. It's one I have never seen at a local game store ever. I had to find it online. If you like original Game Boy titles and you find it cheap or about market price, go out and travel to the stars in an adventure with the Adventures of Star Saver. The Game Boy did not get Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers specifically, although we got another Capcom Disney classic featuring the mouse himself, Mickey Mouse, and Minnie Mouse too. This is Mickey's Dangerous Chase. It's a fun Capcom game. It plays a lot like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. You pick up things and you throw them. Maru's Mission, or Muru, is it Maru? Maru's Mission fits perfectly with the theme of Halloween. It has monsters in it, like Dracula and the Wolfman. There's a giant bug and a floating eyeball, just to name a few. Maru's Mission, published by Jaleco and released in North America in 1991. You play the lovable Maru. One day, Maru's girlfriend Corey is girl-napped and taken away. Maru becomes a warrior and takes to the mean forest of New York and fights monsters. I'm assuming it's New York. The Statue of Liberty is right there. Maru's Mission has 6 levels and you fight a variety of beasties. The game's sprites are a little goofy. Maru looks like a squished kid. The background graphics are basic, but nothing to complain about. The controls are responsive. Jumping is weird. You hold down B and you will jump high. You can go really high. You throw ninja stars as weapons. As for gameplay, it's rather simple, but it works. It's fun enough, but there are better games on the system. My biggest complaint about the game, it has terrible strobe effects. They are really bad. The soundtrack is a mixed bag. Some of the stage music is excellent and gives you the right feeling of the spirit of Halloween. Fighting a mini-boss or a boss, you feel the trepidation and piercing sound waves coming from the Game Boy speakers. The boss talks to you. It feels like a run-on sentence. It keeps going. It's slow. You can speed it up by pushing the A button. So you have to beat up a mini-boss and he'll pass the name to the actual guy who knows where Maru's girl is. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. The boss dangles the words, "Fight and I'll tell you." Don't fall for it. It's the motif of this game. Like Princess Toadstool, she has been moved to another location. Maru's Mission is a decent game. Decent gameplay, decent control, just decent. Nothing too major, but fun enough. I highly doubt many people owned this game when it was originally released. It's most likely not the rarest original Game Boy game, but you might have some difficulty tracking down a physical game pack. It's not that expensive either, just around $10 or so.
Just like his home console sibling, the Game Boy was full of different genres and gameplay styles, like shooters.
This is Nemesis, a space shoot-'em-upper. It looks comparable to Gradius, well, because it's part of its series. It was released in 1990 by Konami. Like other Gradius games, you are flying through bizarre landscapes and shooting enemies. There are 5 different stages. The great thing is you can choose any stage at the menu screen. There are no continues if you die. The game will take you back to the title screen. Here, you can continue from the stage you left off by selecting it. This is probably one reason there are no continues, just game overs. You can choose the stage. Nemesis can be considered hard. It's a space shooter. You don't have a life bar, you get hit once and you die, unless you have a power-up that lets you take 1 hit. Sometimes it works, and other times it seems like this power-up is faulty. You might explode anyways. There is so much happening on the screen at one time. So many enemies and projectiles. Be careful not to get too close to the top or bottom. Sometimes you can't tell if you can fly over something, or if you're too close, you might die. Luckily, there are power-ups that help you get through stages. After hitting certain enemies, it will leave you a power-up icon. There's another icon that wipes out all the enemies on the screen. Darker equals power-up, clearer equals screen bomb. Some power-ups give you increased speed, missiles, different guns, a little buddy that shoots as well, and a shield. I briefly talked about this one already. For power-ups, you want to get them all maxed out. Choose either the laser or spread shot. Stage 2, I find using the spread shot is the easiest way to get through the tight corridors. Most of the time, laser is the way to go. At the end of the stages, you fight a mini-boss and then the actual stage boss. Oh look, the Easter Island heads are back for revenge for what you did in Super Mario Land. I love Stages 4's landscape, full of alien dinosaur skeletons. Some are undead and actually fight you. There are bonus stages if you go to level 2 or level 4. Here you can get a bunch of points and extra lives. You can still die, be careful. Nemesis is short, but an excellent shooter for the Game Boy. Don't have it in your library? Well, they'll just set you back just $8. Okay, Nemesis is pretty hard. You have to beat all the stages simultaneously to get the true ending. Yes, I survived! Nemesis had a direct sequel in 1992. It's not called Nemesis 2. It was, but not in North America. Instead, the title uses the familiar moniker Gradius. Gradius Interstellar Assault has a weapon loadout screen that's found in other Gradius games. You can choose how you want your missiles, lasers, or firepower to work. The game starts off with your fleet being destroyed and you're being chased through an asteroid belt. You crash, you die. This is not just the first level, but the first minute. Gradius Interstellar Assault doesn't play around. Even after you escape, you have to fight off multiple enemies through 5 stages. Gradius Interstellar Assault is tough, and it's also uncommon compared to Nemesis. It costs more too. Great Game Boy title though. Can't get enough shooters in space? Well, how about Solar Striker? Another 1990 release. It's decent and fun, but not as good as Nemesis, although it's cheaper. You can find it for under $5. I've seen it for $1.50 in the last few months. Let's do one more for good measure. Here's a good one. Battle Unit Zeeth by Jaleco. In 1991, it was released for North America. It's a scrolling space shooter. In the distant future, a race of robotic aliens invaded the Earth. Earth forces defeated them in the end. When they retreated, the alien scum left a surprise for us Earthlings. 42 years later, we get that surprise and they attack again. Luckily, the Earth military created the mech known as Zeeth. Battle Unit Z is a strange space shooter. Since you really don't fly, Zeeth leaps to the top of the screen and hovers. You constantly have to hover to stay in the sky. You can shoot in all 4 directions. There are 5 stages, with 2 of them being vertical stages. Each stage ends with a boss fight. You can upgrade weapons. Stay away from the laser upgrade if you have the 4-way shot. 4-way shot is the way to go. Battle Unit Zeeth is very short. In fact, you can beat it under 20 minutes. The last boss is extremely easy to beat. Just stay in the corner and shoot. It might be short, but it's very enjoyable. It costs fewer than $10, although it isn't the easiest game to find in the wild. The rarity of Zeeth is questionable, but I feel it's uncommon. In fact, I've only seen it in a store once in the last 10 years. I highly recommend Battle Unit Zeeth. It's a lot of fun.
We had Contra and Super C on the NES, but Game Boy had Operation C.
Operation C, or Operation Contra, was released in 1991 by Konami, or Ultra. Like Contra Super C on the NES, it's a run and gunner. It's just one big shootout. Keep moving and shooting. You play Bill, I think. Possibly codenamed Scorpion? It doesn't matter. You are player 1 and you're fighting alien hordes once again to protect the world against a new threat, the Black Viper. It's the first Contra game to be featured on a handheld system. The graphics, gameplay, and sound design are very similar to its 8-bit cousins on the NES. In fact, you'll recognize its tunes from other games in the series. although the levels and gameplay are closest in comparison to Super C. There are side-scrolling levels and top-down levels. Levels 2 and 4 are top-down. The Game Boy Contra has 5 stages. In Area 2, Black Viper sends his warmest takes. I didn't write that joke, ladies and gentlemen. That came from the Operation C instructional manual. I like it. Area 3 reminds me a lot of the original Contra when you need to go up by jumping to the next platform. This is level 4. Here you're destroying mutant alien spiders and slugs. Excuse me, I mean experimental squid lice manabella. Yeah, now that is a mouthful. Be careful that metallic arm doesn't get you. Just take it slow, watch for patterns, and shoot everything in your path. The boss at the end of this level is a gigantic alien robotic spider. Just keep blasting the projectiles it keeps vomiting out. The spread gun works best here. Operation C doesn't have the M power-up as seen in Contra or Super C. Instead, you actually start off with Rapid Fire, the first in a Contra game. The other power-ups include Spread Shot, Fire, and its own unique power-up, the awesome homing gun. The bullets do exactly what you expect from a homing gun. The bullets chase or hone in on targets. Another addition to Operation C is the spread gun comes in 2 forms, the standard 3-shot and then the upgraded 5-shot. I really like level 5. The face huggers are stored in vats and they break out. You have to be quick and kill them. The ceiling vents spew of poisonous bubbles. The end boss, the menacing cyborg robot, might take some practice, but once you get used to its pattern, it's blow up time. But this isn't the final boss. This is. It's been a while, Black Viper. We finally come face to Blob? Don't worry, it doesn't fight back. Operation C is short, about 20 minutes or so from start to finish. Makes up its lack of game length by being a really great Contra game. It can be challenging, but some of you might find it easier than Contra Super C. It was made to be played on the go and when you're out and about. It's fun, and it's definitely one I could pick up and play anytime. If you like Contra or Super C, you'll enjoy Operation C. If you're wanting a physical cart, it's not the cheapest Game Boy game pack these days. One time Operation C was under $5. Well, if you find it for under $15, I would highly recommend getting that copy. That is a really good price, especially if the label's in good condition. Operation C is beginning to hover around the $20 mark.
If playing a board game is your idea of fun on a computerized screen, well, then check out Monopoly on the Game Boy. It's Monopoly on the Game Boy. Monopoly was ported to almost every system imaginable in the 80s and 90s. The Game Boy is no exception. Not much to say, you roll the dice, get property, earn money, lose money. It's Monopoly. On the go, on the Game Boy.
If playing board games on a computerized screen is your type of thing, the Game Boy had plenty. There is Parker Brothers Boggle Plus, or you could play Radar Mission. It's an advanced battleship game. Just like the board game, you're trying to sink your opponent's vessels into the sea before they detect your fleet and sink them. It's a race against time. It has a few cool new features. If you want to waste some time, it's not bad. I actually like it. Well, if Radar Mission is too advanced for you, but you happen to like strategy games, especially chess, check out the classic board game, computerized for your 8-bit needs, by playing Chessmaster.
Welcome to Chessmaster.
This is another wide release game that saw many versions ported to various systems. If you bought this when it was first released, well, you checkmated that register back in 1990.
Checkmate.
This is a video game where you play chess and learn chess. That's really it. There was an updated version, I call it early DLC for the Game Boy called the New Chess Master.
Welcome to Chess Master.
The new Chess Master was released 3 years later in 1993. Like I stated, it's an updated version with some new enhancements, but still chess.
I love the Mega Man series on the NES, but I also love it on the Game Boy.
Between 1991 and 1994, the Nintendo Game Boy released 5 Mega Man titles in North America. There was Dr. Wily's Revenge, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, Mega Man 4, and Mega Man 5.
When I first got my Game Boy, I got Double Dragon, Tetris, and Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge.
Capcom's own Mega Man appears on Nintendo's Game Boy in 1991. After getting his mustache kicked in twice by the Rockman, aka Mega Man, Dr. Wily seeks revenge by rebuilding his previous robot masters. Not all of them, just 8. 8 seems to be Wily's number, except the time where 6 was his favorite number. Here are the ingredients to make the first handheld Mega Man. Take half a Mega Man on the NES and half a Mega Man 2 on the NES, bake for about an hour, and you will get Mega Man's Dr. Wily's Revenge. The half of each game off it will precede all the next handheld installments of the Mega Man games, except one. Like the previous installments, you can choose any stage you want. You trench through stages fighting enemies, dodging pitfalls, avoiding first player traps, and disappearing blocks. Finally, at the very end of the level, you will come across the much sought after curtain. Mega Man goes through it and you try to defeat the boss, aka the Robot Master. At first, there are only 4 stages. The Robot Masters borrowed from Mega Man 1 are Cut Man, Elect Man, Ice Man, and Fire Man. How to beat them is very similar to the original copy. Cut Man to Elect Man, Elect to Ice Man, Ice to Fire. The cutscene where you are shown what power you get, you see what his robot innards look like. This graphic is unique to the Game Boy. After beating all 4 of them, you go to Diabolical's Dr. Wily's castle. I know, fast for a Mega Man game, right? Well, here you take on the next 4 robot bosses. You do not have to go through stages to defeat a robot master. Once you get to Dr. Wily's teleporting station, all you have to do is go into each transporter and fight a robot master from Mega Man 2. There's Quick Man, Bubble Man, Flash Man, and Heat Man. I'm not sure why they chose to add 2 fire robots and 2 similar fire weapons. The boss order is practically the same as the NES version. Bubble Man to Heat, Quick Man's ability to Bubble Man. And now I would use Flash Stopper on Quick Man. First use the Fireman's ability. Use Ice for Flash. Dr. Wily throws an additional robot master at you, a new one, a robot built to destroy the blue one. His name is Inker. He uses a sword, but he really isn't that hard to take out. Just keep shooting, and let it charge up in his sword, and then duck or jump and repeat. Once you do defeat him, you absorb his ability, the Mirror Buster. Now it's time to fight that fiendish Dr. Wily. Mega Man is challenging. A few robot masters are harder to defeat than the originals. The sprites are big, but the Game Boy screen size is smaller. The disparity of the sizes can add to some trouble when it comes to avoiding taking damage. There is some slowdown too, and that adds to the difficulty. And this is playing on both the original Game Boy, a Game Boy SP, and a Game Boy Advance, and the Super Game Boy, which actually speeds up games. It still felt a little slow. The graphics are excellent and so is the gameplay. The game's soundtrack, like most Mega Man games, is top notch. Of course, you can always use passwords if you need to turn off the game and come back to where you left off. Overall, I like the first Mega Man game on the Game Boy. Graphically, it's a great looking Game Boy game. Although Dr. Wily's Revenge is probably the worst in the Game Boy series. I'll admit, I never used to think that. It's still a good Game Boy game, but it could have been great. Still worth playing and getting for a Game Boy collector. I say the Mega Man game on the NES is superior, and Mega Man 2 outdoes the original game in the series. So what does that say about Dr. Wily's Revenge? I used to love Dr. Wily's Revenge, but after playing it over the summer, I realized it's not as good as the other ones in the Game Boy series. For a physical cart, a loose one will be about $15. If you want to complete, around $50. About a year after Dr. Wily's Revenge is released, Mega Man has a second attempt on Nintendo's handheld gaming system, Mega Man 2. No subtitle, just plain Mega Man 2. It was released in North America around spring of 1992. In this saga, Dr. Wily steals a time travel device and goes into the future. Dr. Wily Back to the Future. That would have been a good subtitle. Mega Man is still in the present, must fight 4 previous robot masters from Mega Man 2 on the NES, and 4 from Mega Man 3. So just like in Mega Man's previous game on the Game Boy, it takes elements from 2 games on the NES. Let's backtrack a bit and discuss the release dates. In North America, Mega Man 2 on the NES was released in 1989, and Mega Man 3 was released in 1990. In 1992, we would see Mega Man's 5th installment on the NES several months after Mega Man 2 on the Game Boy was released. So, Dr. Wily is using outdated robot masters to defeat the mighty blue one. Actually, there was one additional Mega Man title released in 1992, Mega Man 3 on the PC. Okay, back to the Game Boy game. In Mega Man 2, you start off with 4 robot masters from the NES versions of Mega Man 2. There's Clash Man, also known as Crash Man. That's why he's called a Mega Man 2 on the NES, although the manual says he's Clash Man. So, it's probably appropriate to call him Clash Man on the Game Boy game. After that, there's Airman, Metal Man, and Woodman. Graphically, it looks great. The sound effects sound like a typical Mega Man game. As for music, I'll touch on that a little bit later. The stages are condensed, remixed versions of the NES games. Here is the problem you'll notice. The game feels and looks off. I'm not talking about graphics either. Some enemies do look squished. Mega Man 2 on the Game Boy has some real slowdown issues. I'll go in more detail on that topic in a bit as well. B button shoots, A button jumps. Since this has elements taken from Mega Man 3 on the NES, Mega Man can also slide. This is a tremendous advantage for Mega Man. He can slide and zip through all the Mega Man 2 stages. To slide, push down an A, and he will slide in the direction you are facing. Also taken from Mega Man 3 is your faithful robotic dog companion Rush. Rush makes an appearance in all 3 forms. There's Rush Coil, Rush Marine, and Rush Jet. Just because levels are inspired by the home console version, don't expect carbon copies. Middleman stage, there are spikes right away to impale new players. Watch out. The wheels that the clown robots use are harder to kill in this version. Mega Man shoots a lot slower than Mega Man 2 on the NES. In fact, everything seems delayed a smidgen. Even the fight with Metal Man feels off. He doesn't act like his old self. Defeat him and you get Metal Blade and Rush Marine. Woodman stage starts off very familiar. Killer bunnies, bowling ball bats, and even this guy. Woodman has upgraded his arsenal with things borrowed from Needleman stage from Mega Man 3. There are cannons and needles used as defense. You can bypass it if you just use Rush Marine. For some reason, the roosters that run at Mega Man, this is toward the end of Woodman stage, are destroyed by using Metal Blade. Metal Blade must be more powerful this time around. They're easy too, one hit. In the NES version, they just bounce off. Woodman is a joke in the Game Boy version. He hasn't aged well since Mega Man destroyed him the first time. Wily perhaps should have left him to his untimely demise. His leaf shield is so sluggish, it's pitiful. His jump is half-hearted. Even the leaves that fall from the ceiling are no threat. Just use Metal Blade. It won't take long to cut up Woodman into slivers. Airman stage looks a lot like the NES counterpart. Airman is extremely easy, just use Leaf Shield. After taking the air out of Airman, you get Air Shooter and Rush Jet. Finally, onto the last Mega Man 2 repeat boss, Clash Man. Classy stage has a few updated features, but mostly it's recognizable. One tip if you want to speed past certain parts, use Rush Jet. You don't have to wait for the moving platforms on the track, just use Rush. At this part of the stage, you will find 3 ladders. The middle, there's energy, right an E-Tank, left is the way up. Clash Man is slightly harder on the Game Boy to take out. If you have Airman's weapon on NES, it just takes 2 shots. Here it takes more hits from the air shooter. In fact, you might have to switch to a different weapon like Mega Man Standard Arm Cannon. His pattern is different as well. Once you crash the Clash, you get his Clash Bomb, and you also get Rush Coil. After defeating all 4 Robot Masters, Wily appears in a little cutscene. Mega Man falls on the floor and finds 4 tubes. Each contains a level and a boss from Mega Man 3. The bottom right is Needle Man. Needle Man's stage is set up differently at parts. It's more or less the same. It has all the same stuff as the NES version. There's cannons, needles, and spike-throwing robot porcupines. When you are fighting Needle Man, you might be concerned you're missing a vital weapon. If you play the 3rd game on the NES, you know to use Gemini Laser to thread Needle Man. Well, Gemini Man isn't in this game, so what do you use? Leaf has no effect. Bladed is Clash Bomb. So, use Air Shooter, blow him away. After beating him, you'll get Needle Cannon. The lower left is Magnet Man. For Magnet Man stage, it starts off with a lot wider gaps than the original. Of course, there's the magnet guys flying in the air. You can use them for your advantage from time to time. The disparity of the plunger eye walkers is the most noticeable between the original and this game. They just look weird. They have tiny little eyes and big feet. They had symmetry before, or at least the opposite, bigger eye, tiny feet. It's probably just a limitation of the Game Boy screen, but it looks weird. This stage also introduces disappearing or reappearing blocks, so you can bypass them by using Rush. Another major change from the original is the spring-loaded missile bots. I know that's not their original names. In the NES, they shoot out blue missiles, and these missiles can be destroyed by using your arm cannon. Not in Mega Man 2 for the Game Boy. When these robots shoot one out, they are indestructible. Magnet Man fights just like the original NES game. Use Needle Cannon, Metal Blade, or even Mega Man Standard Gun. Magnet missiles is your reward for demagnetizing Magnet Man. The upper left is Hard Man. The original Hard Man stage for Mega Man 3, you had to use Mega Man Slide to avoid getting hit by the snapping jaws. For the Game Boy game, it's no different. The Mother Wasp that acts like the birds from Mega Man 2 but speedier, drops off its hatchlings as distractions. For fighting Hard Man, just use the same tactic from the NES game. Avoid getting body slammed. Use magnet missiles, and shoot him when he isn't shooting, or when he's stuck. If you happen to run out of missiles, just use the arm blaster. Now you have Hard Knuckle. For the last reoccurring Robot Master, you'll fight the dreary Top Man. I'm biased. I think he's my least favorite Robot Master from all the original games, including the NES. I always liked his stage though, it's a fun stage. For the Game Boy, it has blocks underwater with drop-offs. Just use Rush Marine to save time. This is my biggest grievance about Top Man being in the game. He is useless for a weapon. Shadow Man isn't in the game to use it on. There's no reason to have Top Man. Well, Hard Man is in the game. Use his weapon to punch the heck out of Top Man. He is incredibly easy. After toppling Top Man, you get Top Spin. After defeating the 4 leftovers from Mega Man 3, you'll fight a new robot master from the future, Quint. He sorta looks like Quick Man with a pogo stick. Okay, it's some sort of jackhammer. He doesn't have a life bar, so just keep shooting him in the head and eventually you'll win and you'll take his pogo for yourself. Wily flies in outer space and Mega Man follows. Enter the last level. This is a completely new stage, unique to Mega Man 2 for the Game Boy. It has all these clocks throughout it because it's a time-traveling story. This stage has plenty of hazards and moments just to use Rush. It feels like it's the longest level of the game. You'll be relieved when you find yourself entering the final curtain. And now it's time to face that wicked time-messing Wily. He has 3 different forms to fight. The first, he'll hop around in his mech to shoot him in the glass. He'll go into his next form, a different mech. You can use your standard weapon or the one you got from Quint. The third and final mech is a broken down wannabe Mecha Godzilla with a nice Wily touch to it. Just use your main weapon, soon Wily will flee again. Mega Man shoots and knocks him into the planet. Dang, Mega Man, you didn't have to kill him. Aren't you the good guy? There is one word to describe Mega Man 2 for the original Game Boy, and that word is slow. Everything appears slow down. It doesn't look as if it's slow, it actually is. The Robot Masters don't have the pep like they once did. Even the normal enemies are feeling the harshness of time. It doesn't necessarily handicap the game or the player, doesn't cripple the gameplay surprisingly. It just feels off. That's the best way to describe it. The graphics are excellent and maybe even a step up from the original Game Boy title. The gameplay isn't bad, but the second Mega Man title for the Game Boy is not as fun as Mega Man 2 or even Mega Man 3 on the NES. The sad thing is it combines my two favorite Mega Man games from the NES library. It should have been amazing. It might not be as fun as Dr. Wily's Revenge either. Another oddity is the music. I told you I'd get to it. Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3 had amazing soundtracks on the NES. The stage soundtracks that are used in Mega Man 2 and the Game Boy are not from the NES themes. They are not remixed forms either. The developers used different soundtracks for the stages. Listen to Metal Man's original theme. Now this is the Game Boy version. Here's Top Man's music from the NES. And now this is the chosen music for Top Man's World on the Game Boy. Clash Man's stage always had a laid-back feel to it, at least it did for me. The Game Boy's version is fast-paced and stressful. All I have left to say about the music choice is interesting choices. Not all are bad, and not all are good. Like in other Mega Man titles, you can use passwords if you need to turn off the game and come back to it where you left off. Still, most stages are short. The game can be beaten under 40 minutes. It sold really well when it first released. It had a run with the Player's Choice million-seller label, so obviously the public enjoyed it. Even with its faults, I can see why. I like it. It's still a decent Game Boy game if you like 8-bit classic Mega Man titles. It might be worth checking out. It's a common title for the original Game Boy, so it shouldn't be that hard to find. The same year that Mega Man 2 hit the shelves of Nintendo's portable gaming system, Mega Man 3 for the Game Boy is right beside it by the end of 1992. For the third game in the handheld series, Dr. Wily this time is sucking up the Earth's core in order to use its energy to power up his evil ways. I guess thrice time's a charm because Mega Man must fight 4 previous Robot Masters from Mega Man 3 on the NES and 4 from Mega Man 4. So like the other ones in the series, it has elements from each game taken from the NES. The 4 Robot Masters from Mega Man 3 are Snake Man, Gemini, Shadow Man, and Spark Man. Graphically, it looks great. Perhaps slightly better than the previous 2 installments on the Game Boy. Just look at the trees moving in the background on Snake Man's stage. The music is spot on this time, it sounds like the NES stages. The stages are condensed remix versions of the NES games, at least Mega Man 3 stages feel more like the ones on the NES. As before, B button shoots and A button jumps. Mega Man can slide in this game as well. Since this has parts from Mega Man 4, Mega Man has the Mega Buster. Hold down the B button to charge the weapon, now Mega Man has a more powerful arm cannon. Your faithful robotic dog companion Rush returns to help out once again. Rush only has 2 forms this time, Rush Coil and Rush Jet. It's the Rush Jet from Mega Man 4 and not the one from Mega Man 3. I like the Rush Jet from the third game better since you have the ability to control and move around much more. Rush just moves in a straight line this time, just like in Mega Man 4 and the NES. A common flaw in the Game Boy series is slowdown. I've already talked about this in the previous videos. It's a problem in this game as well. During a few stages, Mega Man's little robotic pal, Eddie, will give power-ups. Too bad half the time they're ones you don't need. He will show up in Snake Man's stage. If you start out with Snake Man's stage, use your standard arm cannon or Mega Buster on the snake heads. Getting the energy tank might be problematic. To beat Snake Man, use the Mega Buster or the standard arm cannon. Just jump over him, repeat the process. After Whacking Day is done, you now get Snake Search and Rush Coil. Gemini Man's level is designed differently than the NES version. although it has a similar feel and theme. Penguins can be much harder to take out in the Game Boy version. There tends to be more slowdown in this stage compared to others. The dragonflies are a pain in the ass. I tend to have a harder time taking one down than the ones that appeared in the original Mega Man 3. Tadpoles are harder in this game for some reason, and to top it off, they're extremely stingy with giving energy after destroying them. Gemini Man is a little slower this time. Use Search Snake. After destroying him, you get Gemini Laser. Shadow Man stage is a fun stage and it flows really well. There are bomb platforms taken from Mega Man 4. This version of Shadow Man is much easier and a lot slower than the NES version. Use Gemini Laser since Top Spin isn't in this version. You get Shadow Blade after giving Shadow Man laser burns. Just a friendly heads up about Spark Man stage. Spikes are everywhere. There is a lot of jumping required for this stage, although the platforming are much slower when they move up, making it easier to time. This is the hardest stage of the Mega Man 3 remake stages, and the longest stage thus far. There are many areas just to find instant death or at least take damage. When you discover those blocks that fall from the tubes, the game will have you go to the very edge in order to avoid taking a hit. Watch out, here comes another box. Tricky, tricky. Seriously, spikes and platforms galore. It's just a more difficult and tricky stage compared to the others. Sparkman might have a different pattern in the Game Boy game. The technique to defeat him is the same, just use Shadow Blade to take out Sparky. It's easy, now you get Spark Shock. After defeating all the Mega Man 3 leftovers, it's time to go to Wily Stage 1. Here the game provides disappearing and reappearing blocks. After a curtain, you'll find an eye plunger guy. Use the Mega Buster or the normal arm cannon. After getting hit and taking damage, you'll move around a lot faster. You get energy after beating him. You find a tube, and we are taken to Mega Man 4. The 4 robot masters borrowed from the 4th Mega Man game on the NES as Dive Man, Drill Man, Skull Man, and Dust Man. Let's start off with dirty old Dust Man. This stage is uneven, probably the hardest stage of the game. A lot of precise jumping that is mandatory to ensure your survival to the end. There are so many baddies. Some are traps, like the ones that fly up from the pits. Shoot one and another takes its place. As the gamer's controlling our little hero, you need to time it right and don't hurry. Throughout the level, you are most likely to take a hit or two. There's a portion of the stage that has dust blocks that you need to shoot. You just need practice, sliding, and timing skills. If you get squished, you'll need to restart your progress with the blocks. I recommend certain portions of the stage, use Rush Coil to ensure safety. When fighting Dustman, use the Mega Buster. He'll try to suck you up like Magnet Man tries to pull you to him. After cleaning up Dustman's mess, you'll get Dust Crusher and Rush Jet. Skullman stage is a lot of fun, and I believe it's a little easier than the NES version. There are robot caterpillars and skull robots throughout the level. The stage goes through a light and dark portions that look pretty good on the Game Boy. I love the music from this stage. Skullman is like Woodman with a shield. Use Dust Crusher and turn that pile of bones into dust and you'll get a skull barrier. Dive Man. I always like this stage. It's a mixture of water and land. You can jump higher, but there are many hazards like spikes and exploding mines. I always felt like Dive Man's world is like Bubble Man's stage on steroids. You fight giant robotic whales, but the biggest enemy is the enormous amount of spikes throughout the level. For fighting Dive Man, use Skull Barrier. If you run out of ammo for Skull Barrier, just switch to Arm Cannon. Once you sink Dive Man, you get Dive Missiles. We come to the final robot master from Mega Man 4, Drill Man. This stage is fairly straightforward. There are new hazards unique to this level to trip up Mega Man, like falling rocks. They break up into little pieces, and if one little piece hits you, you'll take damage. A few areas it's extremely difficult not to take a few scrapes. In addition to the rocks, there are those bomb platforms that explode after a few seconds. You just need to jump off before they explode. Fighting Drill Man is easy. Blow them up with dive missiles and you'll receive, in turn, drill bombs. After all 4 Mega Man 4 rejects are ejected from the game, you meet Wily. He moves back, and you fight a new robot master created by him. His name is Punk. He sorta looks like Super Shredder. Watch his pattern. Either jump and slide, either use the Mega Buster or his arm cannon. After shredding him into pieces, you get his weapon, the Screw Crusher. We get another Wily screen and we go to the final stage. You fight the Eye Plunger guy again. Just like earlier, use Mega Man's arm cannon or Mega Buster. At the end of the stage, you'll fight Wily in two forms. The first is Wily's machine. Just move right or left, whichever way he's not going to land. Use the Mega Buster to shoot his eyes. After he falls to the ground, Wily appears controlling the machine. Use PU at the dome. Once defeated, Wily escapes again, but crashes into the ocean. At least Mega Man didn't kill him like in the second game. What's the best way to summarize Mega Man 3 for the original Game Boy? I can say it in a run-on sentence. It's a fun game, at times uneven with faults, but by far the best game in the Game Boy series, well, so far at least. This handheld Mega Man adventure is full of more positives than cons. Of course, there are passwords if you need to take a break and come back to play. There are slowdown moments, but not as bad as Mega Man 2 on the Game Boy. The music is fixed this time and uses soundtracks taken from the NES games. Sometimes slightly different, or at least to me, but sounds great. The game does deserve some criticism. There's no Proto Man to train you, and unfortunately Rush Jet's not taken from Mega Man 3. Dust Man stage is uneven, you can add Spark Man stage to that list. And speaking of Rush Jet, you can't get Rush Jet until you beat this stage, and it might have been slightly easier with Rush Jet. I'm all for a challenge, but Dust Man stage is all over the place. Some stages seem shorter than others. Dustman stage feels a little too long, and so does Sparky stage. They happen to be the hardest robot levels as well, so maybe they feel that way because of it. The graphics are improved upon and look great on the Game Boy. It looks like a port of an NES game. The gameplay is really good. A few parts are frustrating, but it's still fun. I like the game, and it's a big improvement of Dr. Wily's Revenge and Mega Man 2. Mega Man 3 on the Game Boy is not common, slightly harder to find. If you want a physical copy, you can find one for a modest price. I'd consider getting it. Mega Man 4 on the Game Boy was released in 1993. It's the last in the series of half one game and half taken from the other from an NES game. This will also be the last of the series we look at for Part 1. Mega Man 4 on the Game Boy has 4 Robot Masters for Mega Man 4. Ring Man, Pharaoh Man, Toad Man, and Bright Man. And 4 from Mega Man 5. Borrowed of course from the NES, they are Crystal Man, Napalm, Stone, and Charge Man. The story of this game is that lab coat wearing troublemaker Dr. Wily has sent out a bizarre signal, making all the robots go on a warpath. Now it's up to Mega Man for the 4th time on the Game Boy to put an end to Dr. Wily's mayhem. This by far is the most challenging of the handheld Mega Man games. It is the second hardest to find physically and the second most expensive card as well. As for gameplay, it's more or less the same as the previous games. Mega Man can jump, shoot, slide, and use the charge function for the Mega Buster. It does add something new. Mega Man 4 has a store. You can collect power chips, aka P-chips, and you can use them to buy energy tanks and extra lives from Dr. Light. So let's quickly overview Mega Man's 4 stages, beginning with Toad Man's stage. Toad Man's world feels very similar to the NES version. Keep your eye out for the letters. It will unlock something. Toad Man himself is extremely easy to destroy. Just shoot him with the Mega Buster or standard arm cannon. You can hit him and stop him from using his powers. After croaking the Toad, next take on Bright Man. I tend to like this stage, although it has some slowdown during the moving platforms. What is strange, it doesn't always have the slowdown. I thought it was a sprite issue, but I played it a few times and didn't have the slowdown, and other times it did. Keep your eye out for the floating letter. When fighting Bright Man, turn off his lights by using Flush. I recommend going to Pharaoh Man's worlds next, but always jump to Ring Man for some reason. So we'll go to Ring Man. I always liked his stage. All the sliding and moving around platforms is fun, but it's easy deaths for first time players. Heck, I still die here and there. The downside to this stage, it does seem like it goes on for a little too long. Again, look for a letter. Go into the curtains and fight Ring Man. Use Pharaoh's weapon if you have it, or you can just use the Mega Buster or arm cannon. For Pharaoh Man stage, the biggest tip I can give you is use rain to freeze the sand. Not only does it stop robot scorpions, it makes it easier to travel. Although, if you make Mega Man slide on the sand, it just looks painful. This is a fast, simplistic stage for the most part. You just need to have patience when it comes to those slowly falling rocks you need to stand on. For the last time, look for a letter. Hopefully, you found all 4. Pharaoh Man is extremely easy. The easiest boss in the game you have Bright Man's ability. Just freeze him in place and shoot him. Pharaoh's weapons we get for his trouble for putting the Pharaoh back into a sarcophagus. If you found all the hidden, and some not so hidden letters that spell out beat, you'll unlock Beat, a robotic bird that will help you fight enemies. Pretty much a bonus weapon. After going through all the leftover Mega Man 4 stages, the game has a Wily Mega Man battle cutscene. It's pretty awesome. After this scene, you'll find yourself fighting an antenna. After cutting the signal, you'll find a bomb, destroy it and slide down. Here is another set of Wily curtains. Going inside has a bunch more bombs to destroy. Get used to them, there are more to come. Eventually you'll go through the curtains again. Mega Man finds Wily waiting for him. Wily runs, Mega Man pursues, and another robot master impedes the chase for Wily. Here you fight the newest anti-Mega Man robot master, Blade. You may feel cheated since you didn't get his weapon yet. Instead, we go to Mega Man 5. For the first bout, we'll fight Crystal Man. Crystal Man's stage does have different paths you can take, making the level slightly easier. You can bypass hazards like rising floors and falling ceilings. When fighting Crystal, just use Ring Man's ability to defeat him. Next, let's go to Napalm Man's stage. Here, you'll actually find Proto Man in a cameo. This stage is fun, but you need to move fast. There are drill mechanisms that you need to ride on. Beware of those indestructible missiles that pop up. You cannot destroy them. Use Crystal Eye to blind the rage of Napalm's glare. For the third stage, I recommend going to Stone Man's World. It's a simple stage with a few hazards. I find this stage kinda bland. Forgettable really. When fighting Stony, I always have trouble using Napalm against him. So I might have to switch to another weapon, like the arm cannon. Charge Man's level is my favorite Mega Man 5 stage in this game. Probably my favorite stage in Mega Man 4 on the Game Boy. It's different. You're on a train. It's fun to go through and it's straightforward. To defeat Charge Man, you can either use the Mega Buster or use Stone Man's weapon. After tearing up the final Mega Man 5 Robot Master, you'll need to go through a small stage to have your rematch with Blade. Blade is beefed up, but honestly isn't that hard. You fight Blade and you get his power. You need to escape the stage or you will die. After escaping, you'll see Wily's fortress explode. Then, a new space fortress appears. During this stage, you'll fight these large gun turrets manned by big hard hats. This really is a quick little stage with some annoying obstacles. After defeating the structure with the metal arm, Mega Man goes inside the flying fortress. A few steps in, you'll need to have patience while you jump and wait for the peekaboo missiles to vacate the premises in order to move to the next platform. The rest of the stage has one problem after the next or enemy after another. The curtain contains a flying eye that multiplies mini-boss. This section can be extremely frustrating if there's slowdown. Doesn't always happen though. Mega Man will retrieve some energy after grounding the flying eye. The mini-boss you just defeated will return in another curtain, but the stage keeps changing, making it more difficult to shoot him. At least there's only two eyes. One mimic, one real. At the end of the stage you will find a Wily tube. It'll take you to additional 8 tubes. Welcome to the Robot Rumble Round 2. This is a normal sequence of events in Mega Man games. This is the first time in the Game Boy series where you must fight all the Robot Masters again. Just use the same techniques as before to beat each one. After all defeated again, you will go to the final fight with Wily. There is some nice artwork and cutscenes here. Wily has 3 forms. In the first fight, you must watch out for his fist and hit the glowing spot on his chest. The slowdown can drag this on a bit. The second form is with his robotic head. Wily will try to suck you up and I guess eat you. Shoot him when his mouth is open. Dodge the sparks shooting out from his antenna. When he tries to slam you with his head, don't stop shooting until he stops moving. Then he'll try to suck you up again. Just repeat this over and over until you win. In the final altercation, Wily appears in a spaceship. He'll cloak his ship and use a bomb to take out portions of the ground. Use Blade's weapon when you can, shoot up at his ship. After Wily is defeated for the 3rd time, he will again flee. Does Mega Man 4 go out with a bang? Yes. The last scene is of Mega Man watching the fortress explode in space. As for the last line in the handheld Mega Man games that incorporate the theme of half one entry, half another entry, I would say yes as well. Mega Man 4 is a fun, challenging experience with some frustrating factors embedded into the design of the game. Some difficulties due to the real bad slowdown of the game. Sometimes I think it's worse than the last 3 games. The graphics look outstanding, in fact, the best graphics of the 4 games. The music is respectable. Not my favorite soundtrack from the Mega Man games, but still good. Mega Man 4 is a great Game Boy title. There's a lot of little fun in this little Game Boy game pack. It's not perfect, there are flaws. They are easier to ignore since the game is so good. I highly suggest this game to any 8-bit Mega Man game or Game Boy fan. It's not my favorite Mega Man Game Boy title, that would be Mega Man 5. We will look at that game, well, another time. We spent a while in Mega Man Land, it's now time to move on.
The NES is known for the many platformers on its system. Well, the Game Boy is no exception. Like Smurfs.
La 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 la. It's Smurfs on the Game Boy. La 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 la. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan is an excellent video game. This too is a 1990 release, again by Konami, or Ultra. The sprites are big and only a few can be on the screen at one time. Shredder, never getting tired of his shtick, has kidnapped April. As a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you must leave the sewers and rescue her. All the familiar baddies are here. Footbots, Mousers, Rocksteady. Baxter Stockman. Bebop. Shredder and Crane. It's a simple Turtles game, but a lot of fun. The graphics are superior to that of the first Turtles game on the NES. The gameplay reminds me of a cross between Turtles on the NES and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. At the beginning of a level, you can choose what turtle you want to play. There are only 5 stages, and the final being the Technodrome. Like most Turtles games, pizza restores life. Just like the others in the series, the music is spot on for a Turtles game. There are 3 bonus stages containing mini-games. 2 of these are just plain weird. The first bonus game is frustrating. You find the first bonus stage early on in stage 1. You find the certain barrel, destroy it, I guess it's under it. This minigame, you are trying to guess a number Splinter is thinking of. You have 10 tries. Don't always obey your sensei. Splinter thinks it's opposite day. When he says bigger, it's smaller. Smaller is larger. Believe me, it's confusing. It's just opposite day. This minigame, you're trying to outsmart Krang by leaving 1 throwing star. Still in stage 1, after re-entering the sewer, you can find the third and my favorite bonus stage by touching the wall. Just follow the water till you come to a wall. This is the easiest and most straightforward minigame you'll find in the Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan. It's just a shooting gallery. If you get qualified, that means you win. You're rewarded by refilling the life bar. Fall of the Foot Clan is a highly enjoyable addition to anyone's Game Boy library. The graphic, sounding gameplay are shiny as turtle wax. True, it's simple, very short, and the challenge might be lacking for some gamers. That doesn't mean it's not worth playing or owning. A few years ago, this game pack was only a few dollars. As of today, it's fewer than 10, but most likely have to sell for 10 at stores. The original Game Boy wasn't done with those heroes on the half shell just yet. Fall of the Foot Clan had 2 follow-up games, the 1991's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Back from the Sewers, and then the final Turtles game released in 1993, Radical Rescue. Game Boy has plenty of character licensed games. The NES had Batman the video game, and so did the Game Boy.
Wii complained about the tiny sizes of Super Mario Land? Batman isn't afraid of gun violence in this game. He shoots and doesn't ask questions at all. Batman on the Game Boy is its own game. Don't expect the NES version. That doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, it's a fun little game pack. Both were inspired by the 1989 Tim Burton directed Batman movie of the same name. The Game Boy port was released in the summer of 1990 by Sunsoft. Batman on the Game Boy is an action platformer. Batman jumps and leaps all around taking out bad guys in Gotham. Throughout the game there are quite a few power-ups. Let's go over a few. You start with the N Bat Gun. It does the job, but there is better Bat Gun ammo. There is P ammo, and no, it's not the color yellow. It's strong and shoots in a straight line. There's S ammo. It shoots in a tiny range and is the weakest of all the ammo. There is W shot. It's like the P shot, but it goes in a wavy line instead of straight. This is my favorite power-up to get for ammo. There are a few other ammos, but we're moving on. You can get extras with firepower as well. If you get a gun with a white square in it, it'll give you an extra shot. Now you can shoot more than one at a time. Only a master detective like Batman can figure out why they included this, but there's the opposite. It'll take a shot away. You can find batarangs. They act like shields protecting you from getting hit at least once. If you have more, the more times you can get hit without taking damage. There is ammo that shoots out batarangs as well. Batman the video game consists of 4 stages with several levels within the stages. Levels are fun and it's a fast-paced game. At the end of stage 1, level 1B, Batman fights the first boss as Batman vs. Jack. He's fairly easy. He moves around slowly towards you, shooting at you. You can duck and fire back. There are times you might need to jump over him. Occasionally he will jump at you as well. It shouldn't take long to knock him into the vat of chemicals. Oh no, who saw this coming? Jack has become the Joker. Stage 2 picks up the difficulties with the museum stages. There are a lot of jumps. Luckily the controls work great and are very responsive to slight movements. After level 2-3 you get a great cutscene with the Batmobile. The animation looks very impressive for a Game Boy game of 1990. Level 3-1 and level 3-2 Batman and the Game Boy turns into a flying shooter. You take control of the Batwing. You can shoot front and back, taking out enemies and dodging their fire. I really like this stage. At the end of 3-1, you take on the second boss of the game. I'm not sure what it is. It moves at times fast and shoots at you, sometimes with a lot of firepower. So dodge, duck, and fire back until you destroy it. Level 3-2, you see Joker's gas balloons from the movie. You don't need to destroy them. You fight a mini-boss that's an airplane. After that's taken out, the actual boss appears, a helicopter. This might seem overwhelming. The 4 corners of death and exploding pellets make this one of the more difficult parts of the game so far. Just stay calm and move with keen eyes. After you take out the chopper, the Joker appears again taunting Batman. Welcome to the final stage. 4-1 begins with many bad guys running around. You can avoid many of them by staying on top of structures. There are some decently troublesome jumps, and many of the robot baddies shoot at you. 4-2 is the hardest platforming stage, and rightfully so. The stage moves to the right, and you need to keep moving ahead of it. There are many enemies that shoot at you. Jumping while landing close to enemies plus ducking and having either W or P ammo is a must for this level. Don't be surprised if you die a few times. The game has unlimited continues. After 4-2, you fight the Joker. It's a similar fight to Jack in 1B, except Batman needs to jump a lot more this time. Joker has a spread shot. It just takes more time and bullets. Batman has just saved Gotham from the monster he helped create. Batman on the Game Boy might be tiny in regards to sprites, but it packs a large punch to the gut of funness. Is funness a word? The game is a hoot. Shooting enemies, finding power-ups, platforming, the flying levels, taking out the Joker or Jack all add to the utility built of awesomeness this game wears. The graphics are suitable and work for this game. Actually, I don't recall any slowdown. Jumping is spot on. It gives you room to move around. It's important for a game's controls to work, and they do. Batman might not be the easiest game, but the amount of continues allow you to practice and get better. Just like Sunsoft's Batman game on the NES, the music is excellent. I love the music in the museum stages, but by far, the best is the music of level 4. The game is a short one and can be beat within 30 minutes or less.
It will take some practice though, and I recommend you hone your skills. 2 years later, Sunsoft releases a follow-up game called Batman Return of the Joker. Graphically, it's a much better looking game. The gameplay is vastly different and acts more like Batman the video game on the NES. The game is extremely frustrating at parts, and I believe the game is uneven. The music is great though. In 1993, Batman the Animated Series was released to the Game Boy. It follows the Cape Crusader in his quest to stop crime in Gotham and the viewpoint from the Batman Animated Series of the 1990s. I really like this game, and it's a mixture of the first and second Batman games I already mentioned. As for availability, it's harder to track down a physical copy. I would really like to dive more into this game another time. Before we move on, there was a final Batman game released for the original Game Boy, and by far the worst Batman game to be released on the Game Boy. It is Batman Forever. This wasn't the greatest Super Nintendo game when it was first released either. The Game Boy doesn't fare much better. Released in 1995 by Acclaim, as you see, Batman Forever on the Game Boy is more like in the fighting style of Mortal Kombat. Still a beat 'em up, but tries to imitate the feel of Mortal Kombat. It just feels clunky. Still, I might prefer this over the Super Nintendo version. One of the biggest licensed properties was, and honestly still is, that nuclear family from Springfield, somewhere in the USA, Simpsons. The Simpsons property has appeared on many consoles and in the arcade. One of the best early 90s beat 'em ups for the arcade was the Simpsons arcade game, where you're trying to save Maggie from Mr. Burns. It's a true classic. For the 8-bit Simpson games from the Nintendo Entertainment System, there was 4 related games, Bart vs. Space Mutants being the most well known. The original Game Boy had its share of Simpsons-related video games. In fact, there was 5 released between 1991 and 1994. For the fall of 1992, Acclaim released Bart vs. Juggernauts. Here we find Bart Simpson on a game show trying to win money and prizes. The game's concept is obviously inspired and a little bit of a spoof of the TV show American Gladiators. Bart vs. the Juggies consists of mini-games. The object is to earn so much money per week. Some of the games repeat throughout their rounds while adding a few new ones. Some of the games are sort of fun and others are just annoying. For the first week or round, you are given 2 mini games to choose from: Hop and Fry and a skateboard game. For morose Hop and Fry, I didn't know what I was doing for the longest time, until I discovered you can actually jump further by pressing certain buttons. Even after I realized how to play, it still wasn't that fun. You're trying not to get zapped by electricity by making all these shots on a basketball hoop across the platform. You do all this while trying to avoid the juggernauts that will block you and possibly hit you into a square that might actually shock you. I get the theory on paper why this could be fun. It doesn't come across when you actually play. The skateboard round is much better. Bart skates down a ramp and avoids some obstacles, hopefully getting enough momentum to fly off the platform and drop kicking a juggernaut off his podium. This minigame is straight from American Gladiators, just not the skateboarding part, or the pizza hazard, or the fist that will pop out of the ground to grab Bart, as well as, So the only part that is similar or inspired by the 90s show would be knocking the juggernaut off his stand. Sometimes I can do it and other times I can't. Remember, this is the first week or round, or level. This game goes on for a while. The banter between Dr. Marvin Monroe and Kent Brockman is actually funny at times, and has that Simpsons wit from the early 90s. The dialogue is especially funny when Bart fails to win at a game. That is just great. Too bad the game really isn't. 1993 had the puzzle strategy game Krusty's Funhouse show up on the Game Boy. It is basically a handheld version of Krusty's Funhouse games that were released between 1992 and 1993 for the NES, Sega Genesis, and Super Nintendo. You can take control of Krusty and the object is to exterminate these rats or big mice. Perhaps they're cousins of Itchy. Each level has these puzzles, and you need to guide Itchy's kin to a slaughter machine controlled by a character from the TV show. One level might have Bart, or maybe Homer, and so on. It's a decent puzzle game once you get the rhythm and flow and the process how to deal with the little vermin. There were 2 games released in 1994, and both are rather uncommon. Bart once again takes the lead in Bart and the Beanstalk. It's just a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk with Bart Simpson and other characters squeezed in. The second game released in 1984 doesn't have Bart as a main protagonist or Homer, Lisa, Marge, or Maggie. It features that more violent Tom and Jerry-like duo, Itchy and Scratchy. Itchy and Scratchy Mini Golf Madness. It's a golf game. Watch out for Itchy, he'll try to butcher you just like within the show. You can get your revenge on him. I might like this more if I actually liked or played golf. This game is not easy to find and starting to get up there in price too. So let's go back to 1991 where the first Simpsons game emerged on the Game Boy. Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly, once again released by Acclaim. The story is Bart and Lisa go to a terrible camp run by Iron Fist Burns, called Camp Deadly. Their camping experience is so bad they decide to escape. That's basically it. Escape from Camp Deadly only has 6 linear levels. When the game first starts, you see a billboard. Go to it. It'll explain the camp game that you're forced to play. Bart is playing Capture the Flag. Everyone versus Bart. It might say no spitwads, but spitwads freeze most enemies. So spit away, Bart. Lisa doesn't just supply moral support, but gives items, mostly boomerangs. So get the boomerangs from Lisa and you're off. Bart can jump, use spitwads to freeze enemies, and throw boomerangs. There is more, and we'll get to that in a little bit. When Bart gets hit, he'll say, "Eat my shorts," and "Ay caramba" if you lose a life. Bart can initially take 2 hits when you start the game. If you find these guys that are wavy, use your boomerang or throw food, and you'll get a ring. Or it's a donut. I'm going to go with donut. If you get a tasty donut, if you get one, it'll allow you to take more hits. Keep adding them. You'll need them. After fighting off counselors, you'll come across a tree with a branch sticking out near water. Just jump on the branch and jump over the water. Just a quick warning about tree branches and other platforms in the game. Some of them, mostly the small ones, can be unstable at Bart's weight and will fall. So once you're on solid land after the jump, you'll come across the first beehive. Climb up the tree and get to the branch. Jump over the bees and don't get hit. Don't use the boomerangs on bees, they don't like it. If you get stung by bees, it's ay caramba. At first the game might seem too hard. Jumping is required a lot in this game, and it's easy to jump over a platform. Sometimes you just overstep and fall into water. The controls are a tad stiff, but probably we've played worse. It just takes some getting used to. Once you get the hang of the game, it's easy to breeze through spots. Look for crusty heads, they'll give you extra lives. After the bees, you'll find a tree to climb up and Bart will find himself in a treehouse. Blindsides Bill's treehouse, the first mini-boss. You might try to use the boomerang or spitwad, but it doesn't do a thing. You need to hit him in the back of the head. Throw a boomerang opposite side of you and jump over Bill. He'll follow you and get smacked in the head. You'll get 2 donuts for your trouble. Lisa is hanging out with Blindside for some reason. She has a gift for Bart, a Beekeeper outfit. Take it. Jump down the tree. Don't forget the crusty head and move fast. You can't attack in the Beekeeper outfit, and you'll lose it if a counselor touches Bart. Walk through the bees to get the flag. The outfit is only temporary and it disappears. The next part has a lot of jumping on branches. Just move fast. Don't worry about the bees. You'll come across another treehouse. This one belongs to Rebound Rodney. Use the same technique as you did with Blindside. Take the donuts, and for the second time, Lisa's waiting with another outfit. This one's a football outfit. Bart can now push counselors out of his way. Unlike the Beekeeper outfit, this one can take hits by enemies without taking the outfit away. Still, the outfit is only temporary and will disappear in time, so move fast to capture those flags. The next part has water. It will require jumping. Time it right and jump on the moving log. Remember, jumping, it's stiff in a way, and without practice, it's easy to dive into the water. If you do, it's ay caramba. What I recommend is to knock down the hanging branch before getting onto the log. The branch might get in your way or fall, causing you to miss the jump or go into the water. After getting the final flag, you'll find another billboard. It's time to eat. This is one of 2 food fight stages. Bart uses nasty camp food like tofu burgers, broccoli, and so on to throw at pesky camp counselors. Those enemies will throw forks and knives at you as well. You can duck and also throw food to block or attack enemies. There are 3 sections of food per food fight stage. This is an easy spot to gain a lot of donuts. After clearing a section, you throw away the remaining food in a trash bin for points. After so many points, you'll get a donut for a reward. There are several hidden crusty heads for extra lives. Occasionally, you'll find Iron Fist Burns watching over the mess hall. Don't get caught throwing food. If you throw food in his line of sight, he'll blow the whistle, and you'll be forced to eat all the food you have in stock. There goes ammo and points. It's very easy to avoid this. Burns doesn't show up on every food section, and enemies usually don't attack in his sight. Although, you can get caught up with all the food fighting plus defending and accidentally throw. After the final section of food goodness, Bart will find another billboard, afternoon activity. Flag football with a few more warnings and foretellings. This is much like the first stage with new hazards. Luckily, Lisa will supply more boomerangs. You start the stage off with fighting camp counselors. Just keep moving right and throw those rangies. Rather quickly, you'll find yourself at water with a log. Use a technique of jumping on the branch to make it fall. Then jump on the log, jump over to land. Bart will find a person that's hanging upside down that looks like Moe from The Simpsons. It's not Moe, it's escaped Madman Mort. You can cut him down, leave him, or use a boomerang to attack. I recommend cutting him down. Just jump over him, touch the rope, and he will fall down and salute you. By helping him, he will help you later on. You don't have to do this next part either, but I recommend it. Climb up the tree next to where Mort was snared. You'll find a third and final treehouse belonging to Slip, Shod, and Sammy. Use the technique as the other two mini-bosses. He'll get clocked upside his head, and you'll collect your donuts. Lisa's waiting for you again to give you another new outfit. The radiation suit. Jump over the tree trunk to grab 3 sort of hidden donuts. On the surface, you'll find a pipe to go in. And once in the sewer, you'll find all these crazy spinning atoms. Your suit will protect you from them. The toxic waste that's falling from the ceiling, your suit will do nothing to protect you. My eyes, these goggles do nothing. If you get hit by one drop, you'll lose the suit. At the end of the sewer, Lisa has more boomerangs. The difficulty's ramped up from this point on. There are more counselors to tag you. They'll throw giant apples as well. You should have plenty of donuts in reserve, so you can take a hit or two. Just tell them to eat your shorts. If you find those wavy counselors, they give donuts if you throw a boomerang, so it's easy to build them back up. Similar to the earlier spots in Escape from Camp Deadly, you'll need to jump on a tree branch over water. Once you're on land again, be prepared to fight these killer hornets. They can be annoying. I like to take my time and inch across the screen, taking out those hornets one by one. Get them before they get you. After capturing another flag in the hornet-infested area, Lisa's waiting up a tree to give Bart more ammo. She really is a good sister. You'll head down another sewer. This sewer is full of spiders. They're falling from the top and they're crawling on the floor. Just use spitwads and boomerangs. Lisa will be waiting for Bart at the end of the tunnel to give him more boomerangs. Oh, if you hit Lisa with one of your boomerangs, she'll yell at Bart. You probably should stop. She has been helping you out. After climbing up the second sewer, you'll come across a swarm of counselors and another crusty head. Keep moving right and fight off those vicious camp counselors. Where's Jason Voorhees when you need him? These guys jump down from trees. What are they, camp ninjas? Eventually you'll break free of their onslaught and find another flag. Bart will find more water in another log. This portion of water has jumping fish. Just jump on the log, don't hit the fish, jump on the second log, don't hit the other fish, and jump on the third log, and finally jump to land. Lisa's waiting on the other side in a tall tree to resupply your boomerang needs. Get them. As you move on to the next tree, you will now enter the Nelson boss fight. There are 2 ways this can go down. It all depends how you treated Mort. If you attacked him or left him behind, you fight Nelson by shooting spitwads and boomerangs while trying not to get hit. It's much harder this way. If you saved Mort, look for the Mort head to pop up. Touch it and Mort will appear and block Nelson for you while you attack him. This is how a true Simpsons fights, by cheating and a sure win. After defeating Nelson, you'll get the final flag. Go to the next billboard. It'll tell you that Bart wins the flag football game, plus time for dinner. The second and final food fight stage plays the same as the earlier one. Duck, throw food. Don't get caught, and so on. The camp counselors are more aggressive, and it does seem like there are more of them. During the pizza liver section, if you saved Mort, he'll help Bart out by giving him 3 donuts. After this stage, there's a little bit of a cutscene where Bart and Lisa talk about how bad the camp is and the decision to escape Mount Deadly. First thing you do is climb up the rock wall. Go into the cave and find a crusty head. Climb up the next rock wall. Find Lisa. Get the boomerangs. Again, start climbing up. Some jerk in a cave will start throwing boulders at you. Dodge the rocks that are being thrown at you. If you have donuts, you can take a hit or 2. It will not knock you off the wall. Next, you'll find a platform with a smaller piece that stands out. Fall with the second one to land on another small platform and go into the cave. Throw a boomerang at the skull on the ground and it will turn into a crusty head. Here, be precise and jump with your best skills. It's easy to fall or jump over a spot. You can wait for a bird to land on to go to the cave below you. The cave will have 3 donuts. The next portion of rock climbing will have a person throwing boulders at you, plus you'll need to dodge birds. This cave will have bats and a ladder. I just jumped down and grabbed the ladder before hitting the ground. If you don't catch the ladder, it's ay caramba. Whatever you do, don't try to go down the ladder or the game will make you fall. As we exit this cave, I will warn you that jumping is harsh here. You need to be spot on more than ever. If you die, you will lose all your reserve donuts. These platforms plummet after a while, making it even tougher. Once you land safely on the other side, be ready to climb up fast and dodge birds. The birds will make you fall off the wall. Take your revenge on that rock tosser and go into the cave. It's another ladder where you need to avoid the bats. After reaching the top, there's another billboard. The final stage acts like a compilation of all the previous flag football stages. Instead of fighting camp counselors, it's park rangers or employees of the power plant. They act just like their camp counterparts. You'll also find there are killer hornets too. New hazards include fires that you need to jump over, and there's a new threat, bears. Mostly they're easy if you don't wake them up by hitting those wooden traps. I think that's what they are. There is a sewer segment that combines arachnids and toxic waste. At the end of the sewer, you'll find Iron Fist Burns has shackled Lisa to a weight. Use your boomerangs to knock out the lights. When the final light goes out, the room will go dark, and now you can jump over Iron Fist Burns and escape with Lisa. You switch the power off, and you see the camp go dark. You leave and see a little scene with the full Simpsons family. What else can I say about Escape from Camp Deadly? Only this was released around the airing of Season 4's episode Camp Krusty. I think a few things would have been changed in Escape from Camp Deadly. A, the main bad guy would no longer have been Iron Fist Burns, but Mr. Black. And B, the other bullies besides Nelson might have been in the game, maybe taking place of Blindside, Rebound, and Sammy. Mort might have been Mo. It looks like Mo. Perhaps this game inspired that episode. Out of all the 8-bit Simpson games released on the Game Boy, and even the NES, I mean Bart Simpson games, not ones featuring Bart or another Simpson character in a cameo, Escape from Camp Deadly is the best one. Not the actual best Simpsons game, but I would put it down as one of the good ones. Camp Deadly has its problems. Some level tunes repeat. It's a tiny critique. A much better criticism is the jumping can be off and you need to be precise. There are no continues or passwords in the game. In order to beat it, you'll need to play through the entire game in one sitting. Okay, there is a debug mode, but that's not the same thing. There isn't much level variety. The final stage is in essence the same as stage 1 and 3 with a few changes. Honestly, this doesn't bother me. The food fight stages seem to fly by as long as you have donuts or duck and dodge and throw well. The graphics are adequate, nothing too major or minor. Bart looks like an 8-bit Bart. He might walk funny, but we can recognize him. Escape from Camp Deadly is not an overly complicated game, nor is it a long game either. It can be beaten within 30 minutes or so. This is one common Game Boy game. There are plenty of them out there.
And you can't forget movie tie-in games like Home Alone.
Home Alone. Very different on the Game Boy. Released in 1991. They have this little talk before the start of the game. When I read it, I actually hear their voices from the movies. In my head, it's quite entertaining. Kevin might be home alone, but instead of setting traps like in the NES game or even in the movies, Kevin needs to throw things down the laundry chute to protect them from his uninvited guest. Pizza gives you points. A lot of watches in this place. It looks like the McAllisters are hoarders. Kevin, what kind of treasure looking for in the toilet? It's strange you fight with a water gun. They don't like getting wet. But aren't they the wet bandits? Unlike the movie or even the NES game, they don't care about Kevin's presence in the game. They'll ignore him. If you find loot, they will take it and run. You get hit 3 times and it's, oh no. Who the hell is this guy? When did a Bobo from Double Dragon leave the Shadow Warriors and join the Wet Bandits? I don't remember him being in Home Alone. Maybe it was one of the sequels. Wait. Isn't this the first game? Perplexing. I actually prefer the NES Home Alone. Although, I like the game over screen.
Or Dennis the Menace.
Dennis the Menace terrorizes the portable game market in 1993. Right off the bat, he shoots poor defenseless Mr. Wilson right in the schnoz. Why? Because he is a menace. The animations looks okay for Game Boy standards. This is the game. You go around the Wilson's residence looking for a key to get out of the Wilson's residence. Then why, Dennis, did you go in the house in the first place? Your squirt gun looks like it can't do squirt. I try to shoot and can't hit anything. You collect coins and stars. Mr. Wilson breathing in the corner there isn't out for revenge either. Probably because his house has some serious poltergeist activity. Things are moving on its own. It's a strange place. Besides ghosts in his house, it's full of spiders. Maybe he has arachnophobia, and that pictures him freaking out. I don't blame him. The spiders are big as cats. They are immune to water too. Okay, leaving the Wilson's house, Menace the dentist goes to the spooky forest. Okay, so he can shoot defenseless puppies. At least his water gun does something. It's not really that spooky of a forest. Watch out for those adorable chipmunks. I don't get the point of this level. In fact, I'm not sure what I think about this game. It's playable, but I'm not sure why you'd want to play this unless you are a Dennis the Menace fan. It's a cheapie too, under $4. It should be under $1.
Casper, sort of based on the movie. It was released in 1995. Casper the Game Boy game consists of mini-games. Some are not that bad. There's a missile command type game. I like this one the best. One plays like Arkanoid, trying to get books returned to the library. And a maze-like one. This maze-like one, I can't put my finger on what game this reminds me of. Then there's a puzzle. Casper is not the best game on the system, and besides Ghost Command, it doesn't have much replay value. It's common. It's pretty cheap too. I do like this little thing when one of the ghosts kicks Casper out. I like that. Published and created by Ocean and released in 1992, Addams Family is the perfect handheld tie-in for the 91 movie of the same name. There is also an NES version. The opening theme song sounds amazing on the Game Boy. The plot is loosely based on the film. Your attorney, or soon-to-be ex-attorney, Tully, has evicted the Addams family out of their home. All the family members have gone missing. Gomez returns home and searches for his family. The game is open and gives the freedom to explore the Addams estate. You get a knife to use as offense or defense. You can use it to fend off ghosts. You don't need a proton pack. Just use good old American steel imported from China. Take that, you ghastly fiend. I'm not afraid to knife some ghosts. Speaking of ghosts, they look generic and not frightening at all. There are other enemies too, like bats and spiders. You can jump on those arachnids. The hit detection is often really off. You can use your inner Mario too on other enemies like the rats. Sometimes jumping and trying to attack doesn't work. It's frustrating. I'm trying to stab a spirit and Gomez can't perform. I thought my controller was broke and then I tested the game on another system like the SP. It wasn't the controller, it's just a flawed game mechanic. Graphically, the stages look good. The ghosts are very generic like I said. Gomez looks, I guess, okay. The music is tolerable. I like the graveyard soundtrack. Spookerific. As you go through a stage, you will eventually fight a stage boss. Look at the boss sprite. Pretty detailed. Just have to duck. Don't get hit by the flames or you'll turn to ash. After defeating the stage boss, Gomez rescues a family member. They give you an item too. Addams Family is challenging at parts. I like the game, but it's probably not for everyone. It's typically a game under $10, but you don't find it very often. The sequel is even harder to find. Hugsley's Scavenger Hunt, or Addams Family 2, was released on the SNES, NES, and the Game Boy. The Game Boy is a port of the NES version. Published by Ocean and released in the summer of 1993, Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt is similar to the first game. You control Pugsley instead of Gomez, and you explore the Addams estate while looking and rescuing your family members. It's not based on the movies, instead, the animated show from the early 90s. Right away, you'll notice the lack of music in the stages. This is a terrible mistake. Some games don't need music. This game needs music. The game is bland, and it's rather boring at parts. Music might have helped a bit. Yeah, this one's kooky alright. I prefer the original game. Ninja Gaiden makes its debut entry, and only entry on the original Game Boy titled Ninja Gaiden Shadow, released during the holidays of 1991. It feels and looks different from the other Ninja Gaiden games on the NES. The gameplay isn't as frantic and the respawning enemies aren't migraine-inducing menaces.
Ninja Gaiden Shadow is leisurely paced, giving the player much more time to strategize. There is no reason for wall jumping in the handheld Ninja Gaiden game. Ryu can hold on the platforms and move across some pipes. In this game, Ryu can use a grappling hook. Ninja Gaiden Shadow technically is a prequel to the first NES game, taking place a few years before Ninja Gaiden first appeared on the NES. Like in other games, Ryu can jump, use a sword, duck to hide from danger, or duck to attack. The opening cutscenes remind the player of its NES-inspired roots. Does it though? Is it inspired by Ninja Gaiden Trilogy on the NES? I'll answer that question in a little bit. The game is a lot of fun even though it's different. Graphically, it looks great for an original Game Boy game. Just look at the texture and detail. You see the blinking lights in the background. The opening and closing scenes both look outstanding. The variety of ninja weaponry throughout the levels are greatly diminished unlike the previous games. As for power-ups, sadly it only has the fire attack. You can hold the 5 in reserve. You can find health and other extras as well in this thing, crystal ball or something. It's like the candles or lanterns or other cuttables from the Ninja Gaiden game. The music is good. Stage music is the same from the NES. It might not be as hard as Ninja Gaiden Trilogy on the NES, but it does have its moments of difficulty. Like when stage 4 goes dark. You're trying not to get hit by laser fire. You're waiting for lightning to strike to see the nearest platform. Plus taking out enemies. The enemies have a shield that can block your attack. Honestly, it's not that hard, it's rather fun. The stage does get you throwing problems at you, as when you need to keep moving to avoid flames engulfing the stage. Luckily, Ryu is partly shockproof. Another more difficult section of the game is the elevator in stage 5. You ride up and need to dodge gun turrets firing lasers at you. You might have to go underneath the elevator to avoid them, then jump back on top and so forth. Other times you'll need to just duck or jump. It's all about timing. The elevator takes about a minute to go up. I actually like this part. Ninja Gaiden Shadow might not have as many enemies bombarding like the NES, but they do keep you occupied. They might not gang up on you as much, but there are moments when they do. Boss fights are amusing as always, and you see Ryu at the end of the stage in a graphic cut through them with his sword. Too bad bosses don't have life bars like in the other games. The final boss can be a handful and has 2 forms. You need to dodge his lightning and strike him when he comes down to the ground to land an attack on you. I recommend to save your fire weapons, if you have them, for when you transform into a second form. When he transforms into a robot, he shoots 3 missiles at you. You need to avoid them. There's a pattern to him. It goes middle, bottom, then top. You need to keep striking with a sword or fire weapon. A life bar would have been helpful here. Ninja Gaiden Shadow is a great addition to anyone's Game Boy library. True, it's a different beast compared to the NES 3. Originally, this wasn't a Ninja Gaiden game at all, initially belonging to the Shadow of Ninja series. The game was supposed to be a handheld adaptation from the NES game. Fortunately for us, it was turned into Ninja Gaiden. I think either way, we would have gotten a great Game Boy title. The gameplay, the graphics, the music, all make Ninja Gaiden Shadow stand out. Although, Shadow is not a perfect game and it has its faults. The low health beep can be annoying, and the lack of weapon variety can be off-putting, and so can the difficulty. It's not as challenging, but that can be a good thing too. It's another car ride at Granny's house type of length. The game can be beaten within 30 minutes or so, and only has 5 stages. I still prefer the first 2 Ninja Gaiden games over this one. That doesn't mean I don't like it. In fact, I really like Ninja Gaiden Shadow, and I 100% recommend this game to any Game Boy enthusiast. If you want to track yourself a physical copy, be warned, it's on the rare side, and we'll set you back almost $50 for a loose copy.
If you like classic arcade games, well, this compact video game system had plenty on its system.
And if you like arcade games, you can't go wrong with Qbert. The controls seem a little stiff in my opinion, but it still plays fairly well. It's a fun little handheld version of Qbert. You know, you can't have a gaming system without yellow cheese wheel looking SOB Pac-Man. Ported from the 1980 classic, Pac-Man arrives on the Game Boy in 1990. Pac-Man goes around mazes, eats pellets, dodges ghosts, sometimes eats ghosts, and finds yum-yums to eat like cherries and strawberries. Truthfully, it's a pretty good port. The Misses also comes to the Game Boy in 1993 under the title Ms. Pac-Man.
just like the arcade game from 12 years prior. She, like he, eats stuff and goes around mazes. It too is a faithful port. These arcade classics are available to play on the go with the Game Boy. Frogger was originally developed by Konami in 1981. Frogger hops on the Game Boy almost a decade later in 1998. What is Frogger? Well, you play a frog and you're trying to get across the street. You know the old question, why the frog hop across the road? Well, because it was part of the Game Boy, of course. And he's trying not to get hit by cars or get eaten by alligators and hop on turtles' backs. So Frogger is pretty simple. The goal is just to get your froggies across the street without getting squished. If you get hit by a car or another hazard, you will lose a life. Some cars are fast, some cars are slow. And your frogs can't swim. As they hit the water, they die too. There's about 8 stages and the game repeats. The levels get harder, cars go faster, and there's more hazards like snakes and alligators. Now the thing about the frog, he looks annoyed or bored. Or like, why am I on the Game Boy? It's kind of interesting. And if you get all your frogs squished, you get a roadkill frog that says game over. It's not an expensive game, it's about $5. But it's not one you're really going to find very often. Yeah, there's not much more to say about Frogger.
You can't get enough arcade games on the Game Boy? Well, I recommend the Arcade Classic. There's actually 4 of them. Arcade Classic 1, it has Missile Command and Asteroids. Arcade Classic 2, you're going on a bug hunt when you take on Centipede and Millipede. We're going on a bug hunt. We take it to space with Arcade Classic 3 with Galaga and Galaxian. The last Arcade Classic for the Game Boy is Arcade Classic 4 with Defender and Joust. All 4 game packs are given the Super Game Boy treatment. Technically, there is one more Arcade Classics released in 1996, not Arcade Classic. For this reason, it doesn't count as the 5th game in the Classic series. Instead, it's Classics with an S. Like the other 4, it contains 2 games, Super Breakout and Battlezone. I always liked Battlezone in the arcade. A few arcade games, including the Classic series, got single edition releases like Asteroids, Missile Command, and Centipede. Keep an eye out for Centipede's variant label. It's very hard to get, and it costs a bit of coin too. They're pretty faithful ports, and honestly, they're inexpensive. I see them go little as $1. There's 2 games per game pack, 50 cents a game. That's not bad.
Kung Fu Master is inspired by the 1984 arcade game of the same title. It was produced by Irem, but distributed by Data East. Most people think Data East made the game, but they were just a distributor. Does the title Kung Fu Master sound familiar? It should if you played Kung Fu on the NES. Kung Fu is a Nintendoized version of the hit arcade game. Thomas must save his girlfriend by taking his martial artistry to the limits by kicking and punching a lot of people. In 1990, Irem made the beat-em-up Kung Fu Master for the Game Boy. It's a standalone title, with some connection to Kung Fu or even the arcade game of the same title. It could be a sequel of some sorts. Vigilante is a semi-sequel to Kung Fu Master. It was ported to the TurboGrafx 16. In many ways, Game Boy's Kung Fu Master has more connection with Vigilante than Kung Fu. In Vigilante, you take to the streets literally. The plot and setting all evolve around an urban environment. Whereas Kung Fu is just one building with multiple levels. Kung Fu Master, you are fighting with cities as your backdrop. You can hit, punch, jump kick, and do some flying acrobatics. Certain enemies can carry energy in the form of hearts or bottles. If you drop bombs, don't punch or you'll use that bomb. Unless you want to use the bomb, then punch. You can only hold one. There can only be one. Unlike Kung Fu on the NES, there is some platforming. The levels are extremely short. So is the game's length. It can be challenging. If you don't like the difficulty, you can always change it by selecting hard mode or easy mode. There are only 6 levels. Before you leave the scene and go to the next stage, you have to defeat a stage boss. You know, typical video game stuff. I think the earlier bosses, like the wannabe Jason Voorhees and the barrel throwing guy, are harder to beat than stages 3 to 5 bosses.
I guess the Crimson Guardsman borrowed from G.I. Joe can cause some problems. You'll fight him in Stage 3. It's not really him that's the biggest damage dealer, it's those train vents. Sometimes it's hard to notice them. He'll try to shoot you too. If one strikes you, it can cause a lot of damage. It's comparable to throwing a bomb in the game. Okay, to take him out, save a bomb that you get from one of those guys that pop out from train ports. After some boxes, you'll come to the front of the train. You'll jump on the train and the Crimson Guard will appear. Don't jump down just yet. Throw a bomb from the top of the train. After he takes some damage, jump down and then hit him. Avoid the vents and his weapon. Take the higher ground. Jump back on top of the train platform for protection. Jump down and punch and kick. Repeat the process until he is defeated. Level 5 has some hazards and jumping required to reach the end of the stage to fight the stage boss. It's rather basic. Nothing too complicated and it doesn't interfere with the pace of the game. Level 6, the shortest and the final level. After fighting some 10-year-olds, you fight the final boss. He has a larger life bar than the other bosses and even you. His leap kick can cause a lot of hurt. Just avoid his kick and you'll kick his eventually. Kung Fu Master is a decent game. It's not the most popular title out there for the system. It's one of those that may have gone unnoticed. It's sort of forgettable. The sound effects and soundtrack are both okay. The graphics are tolerable. Not the best looking or the worst for the system. The gameplay is good, and that's the most important thing. It's a fast action beat 'em up. In 1990, this would have been the perfect game to play on a trip to Grandmommy's house, a game you could practice and get really good at and beat within 15 to 18 minutes. Playing today is still fun, but I doubt it has much replay after a few playthroughs. T2, the arcade game. Released in 1992, this is the real horror, nuclear elimination. And on Judgment Day, 3 billion people died, based on the arcade game of the same title and movie of the same name. It looks like an 8-bit version of the arcade game. The game is watered down to like basic shapes. The Terminators don't look as good as the home console versions or even the arcade. Not by a long shot. This was made for the Game Boy, you really can tell. So some leeway has to be given. Just use your imagination. The cursor moves around and it's for the most part responsive. Hit detection isn't always on key, especially if you use a grenade. Don't kill the humans. Use those grenades for those flying machines. It's sort of fun, actually. I don't mind it on the Game Boy, surprisingly. The game is tough on the Game Boy. Do you like pinball? Check out Revenge of the Gator on the Game Boy. Developed by HAL and released in North America in 1990. I love the title screen and the little dancing gators. It's cutesy. The goal, like all pinball games, is to get the high score.
Do it for points.
This is a fun pinball game, especially for the fact it's on the Game Boy. If you played other pinball games on any other console, there's not much more to say. It has multiple screens, and if your ball falls, it's eaten by a gator. There is a slot machine that can activate different scoring tools or open the hatch for the top. It's much better than pinball on the NES. Revenge of the Gator gets bonus points for being better looking and stimulating, unlike other pinball games on the handheld system. Like, Pinball Dreams. Even with 3 different pinball machines, the game is so bland and unappealing. I like pinball, but this one isn't for me. I find it boring, and all 3 games are mostly the same, just with different names. I sort of like Graveyard, I just wish it did more. The music is piercing, but at the same time spookish. The sound effects are good. Still, I prefer Revenge of the Gator.
Dost thou wish to go on an adventure? My lad or lass, grab one of these little conjurers and get whisked away into an adventure of a lifetime. Maybe just a bus or a car ride. Thou getteth what I articulate.
The Game Boy had a decent amount of role-playing games. It really did. Final Fantasy had a few games released for the original Game Boy, although they're more like spin-offs from the main franchise. 1991's Final Fantasy Adventure looks and plays sort of like the original Zelda from the NES. You can tell where the Final Fantasy elements come into play, like how you cure or use magic. Most of the combat is more aligned with earlier Zelda games. There happens to be another series of Final Fantasy games on the original Game Boy, the Legend games. Final Fantasy Legends arrives to do turn-based combat in 1990. It had two sequels, Legends 2, which was released in 91, and Legends 3, which came out in 93. Legend and its sequels feel more like earlier 90s Final Fantasy games. Just look at the encounter and turn-based fighting from Final Fantasy Legends 3. Adventure games and role-playing games are very similar in some ways. They share a foundation, a hero's journey. When I think of older adventure games, I think of typing games on the PC or Deja Vu or Uninvited on the NES. What does it have to do with the Game Boy? Well, I wouldn't think this type of game style on the Game Boy, but there is a game. Sword of Hope by Kimco. Released in 1991, it is a hybrid style game that doesn't quite work out in my opinion. Sword of Hope even had a sequel in 1996. It plays in the same way as the first. Sword of Hope 2 is a tough one to find and it's more costly. Another role-playing game or RPG is Namco's Great Greed, which happens to be a rare and expensive title for the system. Great Greed deals with a hero getting stuck into a fictional world in order to stop corruption and evil. Its turn-based battles sort of feel like the encounters from the NES Dragon Warrior games, although it has kind of a unique combat style. You push up to use magic, and you attack by pushing B. The game is getting up there in price and can fetch as high as $100. RPGs thrived in the early 90s, especially on the Game Boy. Between Final Fantasy and Great Greed, Taito published Knight's Quest in 1992. This happens to be the second most expensive RPG for the system. Late in the Game Boy's lifespan, a farming simulator RPG was surprisingly released for the system. Harvest Moon GB was released in 1998, first portable game of Harvest Moon. It's a portable version of Harvest Moon. It's not an easy title to find. The cost is about $20 these days. The updated Game Boy Color version happens to be more abundant than the original Game Boy title. Of course, there was a lot more RPGs. Roland's Curse and its sequel. You can even say Gargoyle's Quest. But that is a discussion for another time.
Castlevania is a classic NES game. Don't worry, the Game Boy had its own Castlevania game.
Castlevania Adventure heads to the Game Boy within the first 5 months of the system's lifespan. Debuting around the holidays of 1989 is the first Castlevania game for the Game Boy. I believe it's set sometime before the events of Dracula's Curse. As Christopher Belmont, you are on an adventure to confront Dracula.
There are 4 levels of pure terror.
These levels are full of candles that you whip, plus many monsters and a monstrous timer that you must not let count down to 0, or it's game over. As the protagonist, you and your beloved trusty magic whip are all that stands between evil conquering good. So whip it good. Take that, ruling eyeball. One major change in this Castlevania game compared to other games in the series is there are no sub-weapons like axes or holy water. The whip can be upgraded though. If you find 2 crystals, your whip can expel a fireball. It comes in handy for range attacks. You can even stop enemies from becoming bigger problems by destroying them before they can form. Believe me, you want to keep the fireball add-on as long as you can. It can be harder to destroy the bad things without it. If you take damage, you lose an upgrade. A cross will make you temporarily indestructible. These things are hearts. I know they look like a tooth. I thought it was a vampire tooth for the longest time until I read the instruction manual. It's a heart. True, there are only 4 stages, but the level lengths do seem like they go on forever. Castlevania Adventure shares the eerie scenery as in other games in its ilk. At the end of the stage, you fight a primary evil, otherwise known as a stage boss. In order to fight them, you must summon them first by getting an orb. It's complete opposite of the Castlevania game on the NES where you get an orb after the fight. In Castlevania Adventure, to even start a fight, you need the orb. Why do this? It makes no sense. just not fight them. Unless you're like this Belmont, you're just as bloodthirsty as Dracula. After defeating them, you go on to the next level. Castlevania Adventure is difficult for certain reasons, and not just because of the challenge. Yes, there is gameplay challenge, but that's not what I'm referring to right now. The slowdown is terrible in this game, actually one of the worst I've ever experienced on the Game Boy. It can make platforming extremely frustrating. You have to be exact in your movements. Your jumping must be Olympic gold standards. Stage 3 is just one hazard after another. It's a stage that you keep moving and climbing. It's full of spikes coming up from the ground. You have to take your time but still be on point. Try to stay ahead of the spikes as much as you can. You reach the top and the spikes descend. Once you think you're done, you are not done. A spike wall is coming from the right. Now you have to keep moving left. There are secret areas and levels where you can whip candles to find 1-ups and crystals to upgrade that mystic whip of yours. I hate fighting these spit demons. Their spitballs bounce around. It can be hard sometimes to destroy them before taking damage. If you see a spit demon, I know that's not their real name. That's what I call them. If you see one, either walk past it or take them out as fast as you can. Luckily, they take a while to spit. Move away from the drop-offs. Their spitballs can knock you back and you will fall. The spit demon doesn't always spit in the same direction. If you don't like the way the trajectory is, go down the rope and reset it. Wait for the ball to bounce up the chute. Then jump across and destroy that nasty spitter. The stages might be long, but at least there's a checkpoint if you die. Stage 4, more spikes and platforming. For the most part, I like this stage, it's fun. You can ride on spikes, just don't get hit by them. This guy's name is Zeldo. Not Zelda, Zeldo. I call him the boomerang guy. You might have to duck or jump to avoid his boomerangs. At the end of stage 4, you finally fight Dracula. For his first form, he teleports to different platforms and shoots out 8 balls. Just pop off range shots and try not to get hit. His second form, he turns into a giant bat. He just flies back and forth and spews out, average bats. Hit him and those average bats if necessary. Try not to get hit, take your time, and eventually you will finally defeat the Count, and the castle will fall. Overall, Castlevania Adventure is a disappointing Castlevania title. I know it's the first in the series for the Game Boy. It just seems rushed. The slowdown is almost unbearable. Castlevania Adventure is also full of glitches. Sometimes strange things appear and disappear. Both the soundtrack and sound design are good. So is the graphics. The gameplay could use some work. The adventure can be wrapped up within 30 minutes or so if the player knows the game well enough or just excellent gamers. It is still worth playing or owning if you're a Castlevania fan, and loose copy doesn't cost that much, about $10 these days. Just like Dracula escaping the ruins of the castle, it is easy to escape to a much better Castlevania game on the Game Boy. It is the one that I recommend to play or own, if you can. Not anymore. 2 years after releasing Castlevania Adventure, Konami outdoes itself with the vast improved Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge. This time, Dracula, looking to be reborn, kidnaps Christopher Belmont's son to use him in some sort of rebirthing ritual. Why Dracula waits 15 years to be reborn is beyond me. Belmont's Revenge takes cues from Mega Man by allowing the ability to choose any 4 castles in any order to play. Each castle is themed. There's Rock, Crystal, Plant, and Cloud. After beating all 4, Dracula's castle comes out of the ground. Right away you'll notice the difference between the games. The gameplay is much better in the sequel. No slowdown. Is definitely sped up. This feels, looks, and sounds like a true Castlevania game. Much more time was obviously put in development. Graphics are superior this second time around. To slight improvements like enemy designs to overall enhancements like background and movements, all add to the game's atmosphere. In addition, sub-weapons are included in Belmont's Revenge. Just 2 sub-weapons, axes and holy water. Hearts are used once again as ammunition for sub-weapons. The Mystic Flamelet from the previous game is back. Familiar villains from Castlevania Adventure returns like the rolling eyeballs and those annoying spitters. At least their spitballs are not nearly as fast the second time around. Of course, spikes make a return and in full force. But now, Chris can slide down ropes like a fireman. It's very helpful to get past them. Can't forget Seldo, aka Mr. Boomerang. He throws a lot faster this time around. Castlevania II Belmont's Revenge is challenging, but not for the pitfalls that befell the first installment. Platforming is not nearly as treacherous, but accidents do happen. The gameplay is nearly even, and there isn't as many cheap deaths. There are new hazards and obstacles throughout the game. Chris will have plenty of rope burns after this adventure. You know, you can't have a classic game without dark stages. In the Rock Castle, there is a monster when it moves, it will blacken the stage. You won't be able to see, and if you take the wrong step, you will fall to your doom. Throughout the game, you will need to have patience and use your mind to get out of trouble. Just like the first game, you need an orb to summon a boss. Why? I'm not sure. Don't worry, there are ample orbs to catch and bosses to thrash. There's even a few in Drax's hideout. For this boss, the stage keeps panning right and the skeleton dragon will come out of the ground. Just keep moving and hitting him in the head. He will explode in time. At the end of Dracula's castle, Chris must fight his brainwashed son. Defeat him and he will snap out of it. Finally, you come face to face with Dracula. It's deja vu time. You should recognize this placement from the first game. It is a very similar designed room. Dracula is much tougher this time. He shoots out all these eyeballs. They expand outward. There is many, and it may seem impossible to defend against. Just look for gaps and try not to get hit. They act as a shield as well. He'll teleport just like in the original game. Just dodge, stay in a safe area, and go on the offensive. Luckily, there's only one form of Dracula in this sequel. Castlevania Adventure 2 Belmont's Revenge outperforms the original in every way. The graphics, sound, and gameplay are all heightened. It takes pieces from the source material and molds them into something better. This video game is the Castlevania game we have been wanting for our Game Boys. It is very enjoyable and challenging for the right reasons. Well, mostly. It's not perfect, but it's damn good. It is also uncommon, not as rare as Castlevania Legends, which I'm sad to mention I do not own at this time, nor have ever owned, or even played. So I cannot speak if Belmont's Revenge is better than Legends. I recommend Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge for the original Game Boy. It isn't the most expensive Game Boy title out there, but it can fetch as high as $30. If you like Castlevania games or games similar to it, I'm sure you'll get a kick out of Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge.
We didn't get the original Kid Dracula on the NES, but at least we got the sequel on our Game Boys. Kid Dracula was released on the original Game Boy by Konami in the spring of 1993. Like previously stated, it is a sequel to the Famicom-only release. Kid Dracula is both a parody and spin-off of the much more serious Castlevania series. Unlike in Castlevania, you aren't going after his royal undeadness. In Kid Dracula, you play as the kid version of the Prince of Darkness. The story is that a monster named Garamuth is back causing trouble, and it's up to Drac the Kid to stop him. Fortunately, the smart-mouth Death remains loyal. Kid Dracula is a fantastic game for the original Game Boy. Graphically, it's very impressive, one of the best looking on the system. The sprites are nice and big. The game's soundtrack is good. It has nice tunes. The cutscenes are cute and goofy. The animation style has real charm and fits well with the not-so-serious Kid Dracula. What makes Kid Dracula stand out is the overall fun this little game pack has. To start off, the gameplay is outstanding. Kid can shoot fireballs. The longer you hold the fire button, the more powerful of a shot you have. It's sort of like the Mega Buster from Mega Man. By beating enemies, you get coins. I'll get to these in a minute. The first level you start off with one ability, or magic spell, and it turns Kid Dracula into a bat. It does come in handy. Fly over baddies, or get to those hard to reach areas.
The ability only lasts for a few seconds. As you progress through the game, KD remembers his spells once again, and he gains other powers, like a bat attack, ability to climb upside down, homing attack, and a bomb that can break walls. Some of these power-ups become very useful in certain parts of the game. In fact, you couldn't beat a few bosses without them. The robot boss would be impossible without the ability to go upside down. So it's a good thing that KD's amnesia is only temporary. Speaking of boss fights, I really enjoy the boss fights. Some bosses are just silly, like a giant chicken. After you fry it, you still have to fight its eggs. Your first encounter with the boss, you fight 3 generations or whatever these guys are. The last one's an old one, you really can't hurt him. He just collapses due to fatigue and he gets dragged away. Stage 2, you fight a wannabe Jason Voorhees. He needs his trusty axe and it's stuck in a log. You get a few free shots at him. After a few more hits, you chase him off. Then he comes out with a shotgun. A shotgun? That's how I know he isn't the real deal. There are 8 stages total. After beating a stage, you get to play a few bonus games. That's where the coins come in. You're given 3 choices. I want coins, I want lives, or none. By picking coins, you play a guessing game. It's sort of like craps. If you land on the number you selected or that star, you will win the amount of coins that you bet. So Kid Dracula is not only an action platformer horror comedic game, it's also an introductory class to gambling. The gambling doesn't stop there. If you want extra lives, it will cost you 10 coins to try one of 4 mini-games. Pick a crystal, any crystal, keep your eyes on the one you want. If you want A, you play Grab Bat. You try to catch as many bats as possible in order to get extra lives. This is the easiest minigame in my opinion to get the most lives possible. In B, Stick'em, you put swords through holes hoping you don't cause a skeleton to feel pain. If his head pops off, you lose. I feel this is the hardest minigame to get extra lives. C is Rock, Paper, Scissors. You play rock, paper, scissors against a monster. If you win, you hit him in the head with a club. If he wins, he hits you. If you attack too soon, you lose regardless if you technically won with paper, rock, scissors. D is Jump and Pop. Kid Dracula's on a pogo stick wearing a helmet with an arrow on it. You jump in the air to pop balloons to get extra guys. This one is really fun and I find it the second easiest minigame to get more lives. These mini bonus games add much variety to Kid Dracula, adding a lot of replay value. Kid Dracula is not the most difficult game. I'm not saying there are not challenging parts. There are several, like Stage 8. The screen keeps moving and you have to keep moving without getting hit by spikes or getting decapitated by the screen. Luckily, it doesn't go on forever like in some games. Just enough to keep the heart pumping a bit. Although this same level throws you another toe tapper. Their gravitational arrows keep making you move up. It's full of spikes. Fortunately, there are hearts to refill any damage taken. You'll even find a heart that will increase your maximum health bar. Of course, there's more spikes to deal with in level 8. These guys seem something taken out of the Mega Man universe. At the end of level 8, just use the umbrella and keep moving. Don't worry about the falling ceiling or those dinosaurs. Keep it open and just keep moving right. It's that easy. At the end of Stage 8, you fight King Garamath. Just stay under him while he uses his lightning and blast him with bombs or bats, only when his mouth is open. Yeah, he's kind of like King Hippo from Punch-Out! You can only strike him with his pie holes open. Just watch his patterns. Blast him with Bat Attack after he loses his wings. Eventually, Kid will prove why he is the Count. Kid Dracula is just awesome. The graphics, sound, and gameplay are all exceptional. It's connected to Castlevania but stands out on its own, and in many ways, Kid Dracula casts a shadow on Game Boy's Castlevania adventures. Yes, even Belmont's Revenge. It can be challenging, but the ability to get extra lives, it does make the game easier. It has so much replay value thanks to the minigames and the game itself. There are so many great moments that keep the game fun, lively, even for the undead, and memorable. I absolutely recommend Kid Dracula for the original Game Boy. It's a rare title for the handheld system, so it might be harder to find. The scariest thing about the game is the price for a physical NTSC card. A loose copy can go higher than $100.
And no system was complete without a bunch of sports titles, and the Game Boy is no exception.
The Game Boy had a plethora of sports titles. The uncommon Bandai's Extra Bases comes to mind. Extra Bases is one of the better baseball games on the original Game Boy. Released in 1991, there are 14 teams to choose from. I'm playing N, and the computer's playing O. Together we create No! I don't know why, but I find that incredibly amusing for some reason. It has a few improvements over the launch title Baseball. You see more of the fielders and the characters move faster. It's not really complicated, there's not much more to it. My biggest complaint is easy to throw to the wrong baseman. The music is repetitive and not in a good way. Extra Bases was dirt cheap. I bought my original copy for $1, but this is harder to get these days. It ranges from 10 to 20. 20 is what eBayers are trying to get. NBA Jam Tournament Edition is one of my favorite arcade games when I was a kid. It was released for the Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. It was also for the Game Boy. Here it is, NBA Jam TE for the Game Boy. I'm going to pick the Blazers because that's my hometown team and my favorite NBA team. Just like NBA Jam, you can shoot, dunk, boom shakalaka. Surprisingly, it's playable. It's an okay game. I'm not sure what I think about it. I'd rather play this on the Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis. It is on the Game Boy, which is pretty cool, but it's not on fire! For those sports maniacs out there that can't decide between which kind of ball you want to play on the go, either baseball or football, throw Bo Jackson 2-in-1 your Game Boy. Now you can do both baseball and football. And helping you out is the man who knows Bo Jackson. And I guess Bo knows Game Boy player sports needs. It was released in 1991. You can do basic baseball or basic football. It's kind of slow, kind of dull. I prefer the baseball over the football. The football, you can choose what kind of passes you want to do. Like I said, pretty basic. A lot of these were made, and you're more likely to find a copy at a garage sale than actually like in this game. There are a lot more baseball games than Bo's Baseball Half, Extra Bases, or Nintendo's launch title Baseball. As you search the Game Boy's library, you'll discover more basketball games outside NBA Jam or NBA Jam TE. There are more sports than just Double B Sports. Double B Sports. You know, basketball, baseball. If you like football, not American football, but soccer, you'll find around 7 or 8 different titles to pick from. There are a few FIFA games to play. Want something outside that FIFA brand? Well, it is possible to play a very uncommon title, Elite Soccer. Released in 1994, and it was published by GameTech. It's just another soccer game. Are these any good? I'll be upfront with you. I have no clue since I don't watch or play soccer. Sadly, this international sport has a few of the harder titles to find for the system. The sport golf makes a hole-in-one with 7 different titles to choose from. Where to begin? Well, let's start with Nintendo's own title, Golf. Golf on the NES was released early in the NES lifespan, 1985 to be exact. 5 years later, 1990, a Game Boy version was released. It's Golf, with Mario at the swing of things. Wait, there's more to put about. Another golf example is 1992's Ultra Golf by Ultra, or Konami. Just more golf. If you're into more playing on the pro level, PGA to be more precise, there are 2 Professional Golfers Association of America games. The first is PGA European Tour, released in the mid-1990s, and the second, PGA Tour 96. Although I don't think it was released in 96, just a year shy in 95. I'm not up to par with golf or the games, but these are just a few released for the Game Boy. Okay.
Like fighters? Well, the Game Boy had those too.
You want fighters? Well, you got them. The Game Boy had these. The Craptastic Fist of the North Star. Yeah, this is a fighting game on the Game Boy. A Of course, you can always go arcade style.
Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo plays great, where you look at Street Fighter 2 on the Game Boy. You be the judge.
Alright, so this is Street Fighter 2. Okay, title screen looks pretty good. Seems to be a few fighters missing, like there's no Vega. I don't see the big guy either. This is utilizing the Super Game Boy in its color palettes. Wow, I'm surprised I can still do specials. Okay, so it's a little sluggish. Oh, I can do an Haruken. Feels wonky, a little unbalanced. Didn't mean to do that. Alright, I won. Okay, I got the first one down. Honestly, I'm really impressed with the graphics. It feels like Street Fighter 2. It's just slightly off. Feels delayed a bit. I like Street Fighter 2, I'm just not sure how I feel about this version. It's not bad, it's not great. I guess I can learn to love it, and maybe you can too. It's not the cheapest Game Boy game either. It can go about $15.
There's so many fighting games. I already mentioned Street Fighter 2, but here's Killer Instinct. It's not a killer game on the Game Boy. Then there's the awful adaptation of Mortal Kombat on the Game Boy. You know, it pushed its limits, but if you couldn't have Mortal Kombat on the Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, at least you could have it on your Game Boy. It's craptastic.
This is Mortal Kombat 1 on the Game Boy. The graphics, honestly, aren't that bad for a Game Boy game. So I'm Scorpion, I'm fighting Sonya. Okay, I'm trying to do the spear. I have no idea why it's not working. My biggest complaint, the controls feel stiff. Wow, there's so much lag. This is almost unplayable. Man, that lag gets you every time. Look how far she hits me across the room. The soundtrack, I don't know, I don't really like it. It's not as good as the arcade game, Super Nintendo, or Sega Genesis.
Get over here! Excellent. Come here! Excellent.
The sound effects are okay. I'm begging you, Sonya. Put me out of my misery. What, no fatality? So this is Mortal Kombat 2 on the Game Boy. Graphically, vast improvement. The sound, pretty good. Controls are actually very responsive. This is surprisingly fluid. I'm actually shocked there's a fighting game like this on the Game Boy. It's playable. I actually kind of like it. It even has Toasty.
Even the third Mortal Kombat game had an appearance on the Game Boy. So, this is Mortal Kombat 3 on the original Game Boy. What do you think? Better than the first one? Better than the second one? Nah? I think I still prefer the second game. Of course, there were many more fighting games on the original Game Boy. Surprisingly, many Neo Geo arcade fighters appear as ports on Nintendo's handheld gaming system. Arcade ports like Samurai Showdown. Arriving in the arcade in 1993, much like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, the Game Boy saw its own shrunk-down version in 1994. Graphically, it's not bad. The sprites are miniatures compared to the 16-bit versions. Some of the animation looks terrific on that Game Boy screen. It has that Super Game Boy treatment as well. As for gameplay, it plays like a fighting game on the Game Boy should play, but slightly better. I'll try to explain better.
There is some slowdown and it's hard to pull off special moves. Still, you can fight without knowing what you're doing and win. Some opponents is harder to beat, but with practice it can be done. Another shocking SNK Neo Geo port is King of Fighters 95. Although it states 95 in the title, truth is the Game Boy wouldn't get their version until 97. This is a very uncommon title for the system. It's a fast-paced fighting game. At the time of this recording, I have no idea how to pull off special moves, but it's pretty fun and it looks good on the Game Boy. Man, that is great sound effects. The last fighting game we'll briefly look at is very uncommon. Nay, rare. It's called World Heroes 2 Jet. I played World Heroes and the sequel in the arcade, but I'll admit I never heard of World Heroes 2 Jet until the Game Boy. Jet was ported to the Game Boy in the summer of 1995. Once again, the Game Boy does a decent graphics job on the arcade conversion. The sprites are cute. This is my favorite Neo Geo port on the Game Boy. There are some slowdown moments and the moves might be harder to achieve, but it's easier to fight opponents in World Heroes 2 Jet without even knowledge of the special move set. And there are a lot of fighters to choose from too. It's pretty fun, fast paced, not as fast as King of Fighters 95, but it's pretty fun. Takara produced these arcade ports. I think they did a fine job of what they made. All these games were given the Super Game Boy treatment. For what they are, they look pretty good. Although the Neo Geo ports are not among the rarest Game Boy titles floating around out there, they are not easy to find. Maybe besides online, even that can be troublesome. I've only seen 2 of the games at local game stores, King of Fighters 95 and Samurai Showdown. The last time I saw either was at least 3 years ago. As for cost, King of Fighters 95 is 20 and under. Samurai Showdown's about 30. And World Heroes 2 Jet can be high as 40 or more. When I was younger, I loved playing Double Dragon in the arcade. If you don't know what the heck Double Dragon is, well, it's an arcade beat 'em up. Double Dragon is a story about kidnapping and street violence. You play either Brother Billy or Jimmy, one in blue and one in red, and you fight a vicious street gang to save the love of your lives. Double Dragon was ported on several different systems. In 1988, the NES got a version of the arcade beat 'em up classic. The NES version is a loose adaptation of the arcade game. It's definitely Nintendoized. Unlike the arcade game, we automatically start off all their Kung Fu mastery in tow. The NES version, you have to unlock each move by getting enough points to gain a heart. Each heart equals a new move. You start off with only punching, headbutting, kicking, and jumping, which does nothing but jumping. It's like Billy has amnesia, and you must fight to jog his memory. After gaining all 7 hearts, you now have the complete fighting package. Then there's the Game Boy version. It was ported to the handheld in 1990. It's very similar to the NES game. Unlike the NES game where you had to level up and get fighting power-ups, you have them already, which is nice. A few moves are absent in the Game Boy, like sitting and clobbering someone's face. Chin has a few new moves in the Game Boy port. He can jump and kick. The big muscle head of Bobo has a few new tricks up his sleeves, and at times he can be tougher than his NES cousin. Graphically, it's pretty impressive for an early Game Boy game, but lacks detail compared to the NES. Most of the sprites are basically the same except my golden Himmel. What happened to her face? Why doesn't she have a face? I've seen her before. Double Dragon as a beat 'em up plays competently on the Game Boy. It's not as fast paced as the NES, but it is still fun. There are only 4 stages, it doesn't feel short though, it's the perfect length. That is, if you can get towards the end. There is some platforming in certain areas of the game. Some of the jumps are a little more problematic because of the Game Boy slowdown. It can make jumping an issue. You need to time it right and then jump to the next platform. Don't rush. From time to time when you fight a Bobo, don't try to use the jump kick. Instead, just use your elbow or go straight fisticuffs. If you can, take advantage of the area and knock him off screen. Stage 4 is where the difficulty goes from 0 to 60. You have to avoid being sucked into the door after fighting several enemies. At least when you fight the muscle head, the door stays shut. Then there's the blocks of death. They move fast. These appear in the NES, but are easier to time. The Game Boy Double Dragon doesn't have the pattern like in the NES game. Just be careful. After getting past those pesky killing blocks, fighting Willy isn't too hard. Congratulations, you saved Mary with your own hands. That's the original Double Dragon on the Game Boy. Double Dragon was one of the first Game Boy games I got to experience in person. It had an influence on me. I bought Double Dragon when I first got my original Game Boy. I still have my original copy. It's not a perfect game, but it's fun and I really like it. Like the NES, which had Double Dragon 2 The Revenge, Double Dragon 3, the Game Boy also had 2 other Double Dragon games. Double Dragon 2, which is not a port of the second arcade game or an adaptation of the NES one. Released around the holidays of 1991, Double Dragon 2 is basically a Renegade title, just repackaged as Double Dragon. The story, enemies, and moves are all different. You do have a big uppercut, which is sweet in a way. It's not a bad title, it's good actually. It's just not really a Double Dragon game. The third Double Dragon game was released in 1992. A year after the NES port, it is the worst Double Dragon game on any 8-bit system. It's the rarest of the 3 main Double Dragon games. Might not be worth getting though. You look, and you decide. The Lee brothers make one final appearance on the original Game Boy, this time teaming up with another set of beat-em-up partners, Battletoads and Double Dragon, released in 1993. It's just a conversion of the Battletoads and Double Dragon games released on multiple systems. You pick between Double Dragon or Battletoad characters, which was great. You can actually choose between 5 characters, all 3 Battletoads and both Double Dragon brothers. It's actually pretty good, it's fun, and it's a pretty faithful conversion. Sorry to say, this is another game that might be difficult to track down for a physical copy, and is going up in price. Just wanted to let you know it exists. About combining sports and fighting, one game genre that's been around for the last few decades is professional wrestling, well, now called sports entertainment. The World Wrestling Federation, aka WWF, now WWE, was and still is a major show. Their wrestling empire pushed wrestling to mainstream. In doing so, many games were made for the WWF and other wrestling agencies. In fact, 5 WWF wrestling games were made between 1991 and 1988 that were released on the original Game Boy. The first was a game I already mentioned in an earlier segment, WWF Superstars. WWF Superstars was published by LJN and released in 1991. It only has 5 superstars from the World Wrestling Federation: Mr. Perfect, Macho King Randy Savage, yeah, $1 Million Man,
Everyone has a price.
you know some dude, Hulk Hogan,
And the Ultimate Warrior.
These were 5 of the biggest stars of the early 90s for the WWF, so it made sense to include them. Graphically, I think it looks great for a Game Boy game. That intro screen, you can tell who they are. In the ring, each wrestler looks like an 8-bit version of themselves, understanding there's limitations being on the Game Boy screen. To start the game, you select your wrestler. Before the match, the wrestlers have a little banter between them. It's like the old promos on the Saturday Night Main Event or the wrestling tape shows you might have watched before matches. It's actually really fun if you can imagine to hear each wrestler's unique voice. I think the wrestlers' personalities come through in their dialogue boxes and are accurate to the time period. Here's one downside to the WWF Superstars: there isn't much variety in the matches. There isn't a tag team mode or just a single match you can play. You choose how many falls, 1 or 3, and the match length. That is it. As for gameplay, it's basic. You can punch and do some maneuvers like body slams. One annoying thing in the game, and it's an issue for every WWF wrestling game discussed, is rolling around on the mat. You roll on the ground trying to get back up, hopefully avoiding elbow drops or stomps, and so on from your opponent. You can also take advantage of the situation if they're on the ground and get cheap shots in while your opponents have stopped dropping and rolling. There are other wrestling moves like drop kicks, pile drivers, flips, and a few more. They are not as easy to do, and sometimes if you're trying to do these moves, it just doesn't happen. Mostly this game is a button masher. Your goal is to pin your opponent in a 3 count. You do this by bringing the other's health down to 0 or close to it. After a period of time, the wrestlers can regain part of their health back. Some, like Hogan or Warrior, seem to regain their health back quicker than others. Another way to win is to get them disqualified if they are out of the ring for 10 seconds. Some of the other 8-bit or 16-bit wrestling games, this is easier to accomplish. In WWF Superstars, you are more likely to get a countout and disqualification. There is a special move you can perform by pressing the select button. You see that star by your health meter? You only get one per match and it's harder to pull off. By pressing select near your opponent, you'll pick him up and toss him outside the ring. This deals a lot of damage. That is, if it actually happens. More often than not, you'll be the victim of the great toss. The strength of these guys is amazing. That is impressive. Each wrestler's theme music is present, except one. For the most part, they sound decent. The $1 Million Man's Money 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 theme song is absent. It is a different song. There are only 4 matches to win. It might seem easy, but Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior will make it tough. Depending on which wrestler you choose, it will change the loadout for matches. It starts with Mr. Perfect, unless you choose him, $1 Million Man, Macho, with the last 2 being Hulk or Warrior. After the match is over, ring announcer Vince McMahon will break down the win and defeat. There's usually a little bit of a pun about the heel wrestlers that lose, like Mr. Perfect, $1 Million Man, or Macho King. There are slight differences in strength and speed for each wrestler. Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior are the most powerful. Macho Man seems to be faster at punches. I tried to beat this a few times with Macho Man, and Hogan always destroyed me because he gained his health back so fast. When I first had this game when I was younger, I always picked Hulk Hogan. So once again, I went with the Hulkster and crushed the game. It was the Ultimate Challenge Part 2 when I squared off against the Warrior. This time, Hulk Hogan won. After you defeat all 4 opponents, McMahon gives one last announcement and your wrestler image appears in the ring. No big ending, not even a congratulations. WWF Superstars is one of the first Game Boy games I got to experience. My friend happened to bring it on a camping trip and we actually played it quite a bit. This game had an influence on me, and that's why I picked up this game as one of the first Game Boy games I bought when I finally got a Game Boy. Superstars is not overly complicated. It's a quick pick up and play type of game. It's a short one too. One you can beat within 15 minutes. It does have some replay value if you want to see if you can conquer the game with all 5 wrestlers. For what it is, I still like it to this day. It's fun and one that isn't that hard to find. I feel like a basic no-brainer but an entertaining wrestling experience. Maybe you should pile drive this into your Game Boy and check it out. A year later, WWF and LJN partner again to release a sequel to WWF Superstars. WWF Superstars 2 was released in 1992 for the Game Boy. The title screen is really promising. You see Hulk Hogan dropkick Jake the Snake. It might not be as detailed, but the animation looks good. The game gives you a choice to pick 1 player or 2. You need a link cord to play 2-player action though. Right away, there are more options to choose from. You can pick a single match, tag team, or go for the WWF Championship belt. Once you pick your match, you're given another choice, either regular or steel cage. Already it's looking like an improved model from the first game. After the ring type is chosen, you go to the character select screen. This game adds 1 additional wrestler to the roster, making the game 6 wrestlers to pick from instead of just the 5 from the previous game. They all happen to be on one page as well. The only 2 returning wrestlers are Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. The other 4 wrestlers are Sid Justice, Jake the Snake Roberts, The Undertaker, and the Mountie. Each wrestler's theme music is here and they sound great in 8-bit form. Their still images are good, but I think the first game had better graphics for the wrestlers. Once in the squared circle, introductions are made. The first thing I thought of when I first saw the ring and the wrestlers, it reminded me of the 16-bit wrestling games I used to play on my Sega Genesis, like WWF Royal Rumble. It has that same art style. Obviously, WWF Superstars Part 2 takes a different approach from the previous installment. There is no music during the match and the sound effects are okay. I love it when a wrestler falls. They chose to add a sound effect. When you hear it, it sounds like a wave in the ocean, or maybe it's a toilet flushing. Neither are correct, it's the crowd cheering. For gameplay, it's a big step down from Superstars. You mostly kick and punch. You can grapple and do some moves, although you'll mostly kick and punch. Every time I grapple, I just end up headbutting. It's easy to get stuck in the corner on the ground and keep rolling trying to stand back up, but all you're doing is taking a beating. It's dull. The animation on the sprites and the movement's great, too bad the rest wasn't. Tag team is basically the same as one-on-one match, except you have a partner and you can tag him in. Having a partner does make the match more entertaining. As for the steel cage match, it looks fine on the Game Boy. The match can be won in two ways, pinfall or exiting the steel cage. Although your opponent needs to have almost no health to do so. If they stand up, you'll come back down. If you are knocked down to the ground, the most frustrating thing is sometimes you can't get back up, even if you have health left in reserve. You'll just roll around doing the roll. Even with the new improvements like an additional wrestler, new match types, and even the steel cage, WWF 2 Superstars doesn't powerbomb the first game. I would argue that WWF Superstars actually leg drops and pins the sequel for the 1, 2, 3. Maybe the next WWF game will be better. Early fall in 1993, LJN releases another WWF game for the Game Boy. Instead of Superstars 3, we got King of the Ring. The title screen looks pretty good. Maybe this will be the best wrestling game on the Game Boy. King of the Ring offers even more variety to choose from than Superstars 2. Go one-on-one, tag match, tournament, and King of the Ring. This is the wrestler select screen? Look at Bret Hart, it's so cartoony. At least they have the ratings for like speed, strength, and stamina. What in the Narcissist? That's supposed to be Lex Luger? The Heartbreak Kid? No way, is that you? At least your entrance music is here. Mr. Perfect? That is not a perfect picture of you. What? That's supposed to be Razor Ramon. Say hello to not this picture guy. Macho Man? At least he's smiling. Yokozuna? Hulk Hogan? What happened to your image, brother? Wow. How did they get me in this game? I look damn good, too. Oh, excuse me, is that you? How did they get you in this game? They painted you with such accuracy. No wonder they neglected the other wrestlers. They focused on us. Fingers crossed this will actually be a good game. It's not. It's terrible. The texture is gone from the previous two games, leaving barely any differences between the two wrestlers in the ring. The gameplay is lackluster. Not only boring, but also the matches are unnecessarily long-winded. The only bright side to the gameplay is the smooth wrestling combat. King of the Ring is unimpressive, and I don't recommend this one. I'd rather play Superstars 2 any day. Sadly, this would be the last WWF game on the original Game Boy to feature Hulk Hogan or Macho Man, ending an era. In 1994, WWF Raw was ready to rumble on the portable handheld system, once again published by LJN. There are 3 match types in this game, one-on-one, tag team, and Survivor Series. That is an interesting match to include on the Game Boy. King of the Ring had 9 wrestlers including you or I. Raw has 8 wrestlers, 6 have had appearances on other Game Boy games, Diesel and Doink the Clown being their first entry. Let me just say their icon appearances look good, a big step up from the cartoonish look of King of the Ring. As we enter the squared circle as our competitors battle, it has a similar feel to Superstars 2, just on a smaller scale. Like other WWF games, you can punch, kick, grapple, and do moves. There's a lot more wrestling grapples and moves in WWF Raw. The grapples have the same style as Royal Rumble. I already mentioned that earlier. Raw is a big upgrade over King of the Ring. It's still not a great wrestling game. I find it improved, but still not engaging enough for long plays. The matches still feel way too long. I love the Survivor Series, but what point of playing through it if I'm not enjoying it? Given a choice, I'd rather play this than King of the Ring. Maybe I'll give it another chance in the future. After 7 years of Game Boy wrestling games by the WWF, we come to the last game for the black and white Game Boy. The final entry is WWF Warzone, released in 1998. This had an N64 port with a lot more features and wrestlers to choose from. The different modes of play include singles, tag match, WWF challenge, and cage match. There are 13 wrestlers to choose from, the biggest roster of all the WWF Game Boy games. Highlights include Mankind, Rock, Steve Austin, Owen Hart, Goldust, Farouk, and Undertaker. One interesting addition to WWF Warzone is the biography section. Here it breaks down each wrestler's height, weight, hails from, and finishers. They each have a quote too, except for Kane, which has nothing really on his page. Want to know what Warzone's wrestling's like? Well, it's like this. I really don't know what to say. It's bad. Not as bad as King of the Ring, nevertheless, this is appalling. This has a strange side view, and everything's off. The controls, the weird stance they give, they look like they're having back problems. Each wrestler looks similar. There isn't much distinctive detail to tell them apart. The sprites themselves aren't bad, they're just not as good as Superstars or its sequel. At least in Superstars or the sequel, they have more defining details of the sport entertainer's appearance. Oh yeah, if you get knocked down in Warzone, the rolling on the floor is the second worst in the WWF games. Scratch that, probably the worst. Ironically, WCW, World Championship Wrestling, WWF's biggest competitor at the time, only had one video game release for the Game Boy. WCW, the main event, was released in 1994 by FCI. The intro screen looks good. The music is upbeat. There are only two match types, single and elimination. You have the option to set the time and falls allowed. There are 9 WCW wrestlers to choose from: Rick Rude, Ron Simmons, Steve Austin, Sting, Dusty Rhodes, Johnny B. Bad, Big Van Vader, and the Steiner brothers, Rick and Scott. The sprites are cartoonish, but I think it works for this game. At least the wrestlers are somewhat recognizable. Wow, Vader lost some weight for the main event. The gameplay lacks in the main event. They can punch and kick. There are wrestling moves such as body slams and pile drivers. Too bad this game wasn't more fun. At times, the wrestlers seem to leap all over the place. Here we go again with the rolling around on the floor instead of just getting up. Once again, there's no actual stage music during the matches. Only sound effects are used. I know it was programmed that way. It's like an actual wrestling match. It reminds me of WWF Superstars 2 in music design. It even has that funny wave sound effect for crowd cheering. This is cool though. The loser is carried out in a stretcher. That's a nice touch. World Championship Wrestling main event is not a slobber knocker. It's a slumber knocker. It's just not an enjoyable experience. Sadly, WCW main event is actually on the rare side. It's also the most expensive wrestling game for the system. There were other wrestling games on the Game Boy. The earliest wrestling game for the Game Boy didn't come from the WWF or WCW or any other wrestling territory in the USA. It was published by Hall. Hall Wrestling was released in 1990. It features similarities to the Fire Pro Wrestling series. The graphics are basic, but it's understandable being an early Game Boy title. I like the cartoonish look for the characters, especially in a hold or getting a bite taken out of the face. The gameplay is a mixed bag. You can punch, but it's best to wear down your opponent with moves or holds. Hell Wrestling is an uncommon title. The game itself is fun enough. You might want to try it out if you like these type of wrestling games like the Fire Pro series. Another uncommon wrestling game was published by Natasumi in 1993 called Ring Rage. It's wrestling mixed with martial arts, so it's kind of like MMA. There are 5 wrestlers to choose from. The goal is to win the championship. The gameplay is fluid and fast-paced. It happens to be better than some of the other games we already talked about. It's okay. How about Pit Fighter? Can you believe it? This was released on the Game Boy? Originally an arcade game created to capitalize on the popularity of Mortal Kombat, the Game Boy would get a port shrunken down to its 8-bit screen in 1992. Yeah, this is Pit Fighter. I don't think I need to say much more about the game. And of all the wrestling games I covered, I still feel that WWF Superstars is the best one of the bunch. Hell Wrestling is good, but doesn't flow as well. I feel the matches sometimes go on for a little too long. Ring Rage is okay as well, but let's face it, the characters are not actual professional wrestlers and the design is hit or miss for me. WWF Superstars might be a basic game, but at least it's a fun game. A game you don't need to finish, you can just play a couple of matches if you like. Better designed matches than other WWF games released for the Game Boy. The game has personality and there's a charm factor. The game is nostalgic for me for multiple reasons. It was one of the first experiences I had with Nintendo's handheld gaming console. WWF Superstars for the Game Boy also features childhood wrestling icons like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, and Ultimate Warrior. Let's be real here. The other WWF wrestling games aren't as good. Some are just plain bad. Either not fast-paced, or the matches drag, or the graphics are terrible. WWF Superstars 2 had some potential, but they missed the dropkick. Its biggest competitor, WCW, released a somewhat dull entry into the wrestling handheld market. WWF Superstars, in my opinion, is worth a play, and it's one of 3 wrestling games I recommend for the system. Plus, it's very common and cheap. What you gonna do, brother? Play some WWF Superstars on the Game Boy, dude. Tetris isn't the only puzzler game on the Game Boy. Remember Quirk from the first season of Video Power? You know, the giant talking tomato part of the power team? That was Quirk. He's actually from a Game Boy game, Quirk. It was released in North America in 1990. It's very challenging and addicting. There are several different modes to pick from, going up, heading out, versus mode. They each have their own unique rules and goals. If you get stuck, you can always try a redo. It's fun, and it's only about $5. Well, if you want another puzzle game, you can always go Boxel for the Game Boy. You push around boxes to find an exit. It's Boxel. Tumble Pop was originally a Data East arcade game from 1991. 2 years later it was ported to the Game Boy. I love the intro to this game. Tumble Pop is an action puzzle mazer. You are a Ghostbuster of sorts, and you have a vacuum-like proton pack to suck up dangerous creatures. They don't seem too bad, they're actually cute. This one reminds me of the McDonald's Fry guys. You begin the game with an overworld stage. You walk around to different stages or lands. Each stage you bust different monsters. There's a theme to each land. One might have clowns, or a ghost, another aliens. This one has creatures of the deep, and so on and so on. Some of the monsters are more difficult to capture than others. As for gameplay, you jump around different parts of the level, try not to get hit, but most importantly, try to suck up enemies. You suck up monsters and turn them into weapons by shooting a star out of your Ghostbuster Inspire Proton Pack. The more you suck up, the stronger the star. There is some strategy involved. Here's the warning. They don't like to be encapsulated. You can only hold them for so long. After a certain period of time, if you don't weaponize that imprisoned guest, they will break out and you will lose a life. So if you hear that beep, shoot him out. There's also a goal to spell the game's name, Tumble Pop. If you spell Tumble Pop, you will automatically beat the level and go to a bonus stage. The bonus stage, you get power-ups to help you on your journey. Bonus stages can be a little frustrating. You can hop around and miss these power-ups. I recommend staying in the middle or staying in the upper right platform. I believe that's the only spot extra lives will fall down. Other power-ups include coins, I'll get to that in a second, shoes that can make you go faster. Our hero does jump and move sluggish. The shoes are very helpful to speed him up a tad. An outfit that helps you from taking damage, a clock to stop the timer, and one that gives you more suck power. Suck power. Yeah, suck power. And extra lives. The game consists of about 6 different stages. You go around a track beating levels within the stages. Level length all depends on the word Tumble Pop. Some levels will last minutes. Yes, levels are timed. Other levels can be beat within seconds. It all comes down to a single letter at times. Almost forgot to mention, you might get several repeat letters until you get that 1 or 2 letter that you're missing to spell Tumble Pop. Okay, it's randomish. Still, you can at times get more letters for sucking up multiple monsters and spitting them out. During the overworld or in a stage you can find shops. Here's where you use the coins. You buy bullets. 1 coin equals 3 bullets. This is another bonus stage. Well, the game calls it a sub-game. Same thing. You jump on platforms at different heights and shoot at distant enemies for power-ups. There's some strategy involved for this sub-game too. It's fun enough, but it can be frustrating. You might miss a lot of. At some point within the stage, you'll come across a building that sort of looks like a castle. Here you fight a stage boss. There are 2 types. Boss Type A. These are bosses that will use projectiles that you'll need to shoot back at the boss to damage them. All the bosses don't have health meters. After so many hits, you will finally defeat a boss. Then there's Boss Type B. These are bosses that will use some sort of level monster to suck up and make them into stars to shoot at the boss. If you like the snowman, you will also shoot off parts of the body as well. Just watch for patterns, it's pretty simple, it's pretty fun. The animation is really good when the boss gets hit. I love the look of the dragon. Going through the levels, you will notice that they get more complex. They get trickier and more hazards come into play. That stage right before the last boss, it is a little bit of a doozy. You'll be chasing the world's tumble pop just to pass by it, or use the clock. Multiple clocks if you have them. As you play Tumble Pop, you might notice a similarity to another game, Snow Brothers, or on the Game Boy Snow Brothers Jr. That too is an action puzzle mazer. The gameplay is very similar. In Tumble Pop, you suck up enemies and shoot them out of stars. In Snow Brothers, you use your snow powers to make them a giant snowball and use the snowball to tackle other enemies, and you jump around the platforms very similarly. Even the boss fights seem recognizable from each other. Maybe distant cousins, but they're definitely in the same family tree. Well, on the intro screen, there are 3 modes. One player game, which is one we're talking about mostly. Versus, where you can play with someone via connection cable. And lastly, construction. You can make your own levels. This is a nice addition to the game. Tumble Pop has a real fun theme and some real charm. Graphically, it's a decent looking Game Boy game. The sprites are cute and have their own unique little personalities. The music is upbeat. The controls are very responsive and handle well. Jumping around and sucking up enemies and spitting out monsters is enjoyable. Stages are fun for the most part, but it is a mixed bag. The game does feel long-winded. The stages in the game itself seem like they go on without end. Our Buster of Monsters doesn't have a proton pack. He has an Energizer pack. It keeps going and going and going. Even with spelling Tumble Pop and some stages lasting just mere seconds, the game goes on way too long. Fighting bosses is really fun, it's the highlight of the game. You know, I recommend Tumble Pop. Overall, it's a fun little charmer. The construction mode does give it a little bit more replay value. I have actually never seen the arcade in person. I bet there's quite a few of us. But we have the next best thing with the Game Boy. This is what makes the Game Boy's library so great. It has all these unique ported games. Some, like Tumble Pop, are only ported to Nintendo's greatest handheld system. If you want a physical game pack, it might be a toughie to find in the wild or at a local game store. It's rather uncommon. It's not a cheap game too, it's over $25. Until next time. What happens when you add human royalty, curse into snowman form, and arcade ports of the Game Boy? You get the winter refresh game, Snow Brothers. If you haven't played Snow Brothers, it was an arcade game released in 1990. The NES got a port by Capcom in 1991. A little while later, it was ported to the Game Boy in 1992. The Game Boy version is dubbed Snow Brothers Jr. Unlike the NES or arcade, which has 2 Snow Brothers, Nick and Tom, the Junior Edition is a single-player game only. So don't get out your link cable. Snow Brothers Jr. is another action puzzle mazer. You are the snowman Tom or Nick, not sure which one. The other snow person has been kidnapped and it's your job to save him and stop evil. You might ask how? By using your snow powers by turning enemies into giant snowballs. Once they're packed tightly, you can use them to crush other enemies or hit a wall. Since you're made of snow, it doesn't hurt you when you get rolled over. In fact, you take a little ride until you smash against a wall or something. It's the only way to travel. Some levels, they keep going and going and going. As you play Snow Brothers, you might notice a similarity to another game, Tumble Pop. That too is an action puzzle mazer. They seem like cousins, at least to me. Okay, this is deja vu. Actually, Snow Brothers feels more related to another great action puzzle mazer, Bubble Bobble. As for gameplay, well, the gameplay is always the same. You jump around different parts of the level, try not to get hit, but most importantly, try to throw snow at enemies. You have to clear this stage of enemies in order to proceed to the next stage. Levels can get more difficult and some enemies will be harder to trap in snow. The game is full of little strategy and problem-solving moments, and you want to hit more than one or all of them. The enemies just don't move back and forth. In fact, they jump all around. If you get hit, you'll lose a life and a power-up. I'll get to that in a second or two. Some enemies will try to dive bomb you. There's one that barks out a ghost or it's really bad snot or something. A later enemy will actually shoot projectiles at you. You don't bump into those guys until like the last 9 stages or so. There's one that acts like the Tasmanian Devil by turning into a tornado. As you strike a baddie with bitch and white powder, remember to cover them completely. Unless that's part of your strategy to stall 1 or 2 of them to line them up like bowling pins. If you don't cover them completely, they can't escape. often, you will need to time your snowball push just right in order to maximize damage and take out more enemies. As I mentioned, you can get power-ups in the game as rewards. There's one that can make you throw farther, one that makes you faster. He is wired, just look at his legs. They can't stop moving. I think Nick or Tom took something else that's white and powdery. It too can be called snow. Another power-up makes you stronger, and it's easy to cover enemies in snow. Another power-up will blow you up like a balloon and you fly around taking out enemies. Oh, the wonders of the drugs these guys take. This is my favorite power-up. There are other items you may or may not find. If you find a snow face, you'll get a little time to turn these guys into letters. In the NES version, if you spell snow, you get extra lives. The game consists of about 60 different stages. Stages are short, and that's the perfect length for this game. If you spend too much time on a stage, a pumpkin ghoul will appear. It's like Bubble Bobble, where the ghost shark appears if you don't pop all the monsters in your bubbles. Unlike the NES version where he appears pretty frequently and pretty quickly, in the Game Boy version, it takes a while for him to appear. You have a little more breathing room. And he doesn't shoot out ghost dogs to attack you. After 9 levels, you will fight a boss. The boss fights are fun. Basically, you find a pattern, use a creature in that level, turn that creature into your own personal ammunition, and chuck it at the boss. You can use your regular snow powers, it just takes longer. After a boss is taken down, you will get a bottle and have a little mini game where you're trying to get power-ups. This is a strange thing, I'm not sure why, but the game might make you skip a few levels to go to the last boss, the sun. And this has happened to me a few times. The last boss is simple and easy. Congratulations. This is Snow Brothers Jr. Snow Brothers Jr. might face limitations being on the Game Boy compared to the arcade or the NES port. It doesn't have limitation of the fun this little game is. It's not long-winded like Tumble Pop. With the exceptions of the cutscenes, which there's nothing wrong with, the game flows really well. The graphics are basic, but it looks appropriate on the Game Boy. It's not the best looking game, but you can't complain. The music blends in the background. In the intro, there is no music, unlike the NES version. Snow Brothers Jr. is a game where you can just pick up and play. The controls are responsive and handle really well. Jumping and hitting monstrosities with your snow is easy. You can underestimate your opponents though, and take a hit. Stages are fun and the perfect length. Fighting bosses and getting power-ups keeps you playing. You can beat the game with under 45 minutes without too many continues. I like the game, and I will recommend it. It's also a cheaper alternative to the NES counterpart. At one time, soared over past $200. If you want a physical copy, it will cost you over $40 USD. It's not a cheap Game Boy game pack, but compared to the NES, it is. Can't decide if you want to play a space shooter or puzzle game? You don't have to with Quarth. This game is the mashup of your dreams. It's a puzzle shooter. Quarth was released in 1990, once again by Konami. I know. How many games by them are on this list? A lot. In Quarth, you choose a ship. It doesn't really matter which one, it's more for aesthetics. They don't have different settings. One isn't faster than the other or more powerful, they just look different. For gameplay, the premise is blocks fall from the top and you shoot at them. The goal is to form complete squares or rectangles. They'll leave the playing field, and you continue your pursuit of squares and rectangles until you are destroyed. The longer you play, the faster the blocks fall. It gets more challenging the longer you play. Unfortunately, it wasn't released on the NES, but there's a Famicom version. In the States, we only have the Game Boy version, which is a lot of fun. It doesn't hurt the pocketbook either, being around $5 these days. Do you like to race? If that's so, the Game Boy had racing games. Just to name a few, how about Taito's Chase HQ? The graphics are impressive for the Game Boy. The arcade-style Tecmo Power Racer, it looks like a Pac-Man Demolition Derby crossover.
If you like water race sports instead, you can always play Wave Race. Released in 1992, you race 3 other boaters and their nicest jet skis around a water track. It's another very simple game. It's decent. Bikers were represented as well. Game Boy had Motocross Maniacs, released by Konami during the first 6 months of the Game Boy's lifespan, appearing in North America in 1990. Motocross Maniacs is Game Boy's answer to Excite Bike. It plays much like it. You race around tracks on your bike, try not to fall down. You do wheelies, go around loop-de-loops. Your character is just a maniac for motocross. I'm a maniac for motocross. Sorry about that, I just had to sing it. Obviously, the game is simple and not much to it. For an early release, I think it's perfect in its simplicity. It is fun. Not much depth, but it is playable. It shouldn't cost that much either. Under $4. Out of Gas. This is where the phrase "don't judge a book by its cover" comes into mind. This title makes sense, but the artwork does not. Out of Gas was released in 1992. Out of Gas is an action game with maze and puzzle elements. I would also throw in the racing genre in there as well. It's a story of a guy trying to park with his girlfriend, but she throws a wrench in his plans by forcing him to get gas instead of canoodling. The cutscenes are cute and tell a fun story. The gameplay can be addicting. It's a longer game. Thank goodness there are passwords. It's also a very uncommon Game Boy title to find these days. You can't talk about the Game Boy without discussing the pink blob himself, Kirby. Kirby Adventure hit stores in 1993 for Nintendo Entertainment System. Kirby's a side-scrolling action game. You play as the pink guy with attitude, Kirby. Kirby can fly, but he is known for his blob-like hunger. He sucks up enemies like a Kirby vacuum and spits them out. He can even copy some abilities from enemies after eating them. Kirby must save Dreamland. King Dedede has taken the Star Rod and broken it up into little pieces, and now Kirby must find them and put them together. Although Dedede was trying to do good by stopping the big bad of the game, Nightmare. Dedede and Kirby join forces to defeat Nightmare. Kirby's Adventure is a great game and a lot of fun. It stands out as one of the best NES games. Kirby's Adventure was the sequel. Kirby's Dream Land was the first game in the series, and our first introduction to the Curbster. Developed by HAL and released for Game Boy in 1992 by Nintendo, it would become a successful franchise, now with over 20 titles, plus not to mention Kirby cameos in other games. In Kirby's Adventure, King Dedede is up to no good and has stolen all the food in Dreamland. Kirby, realizing his dietary needs are in jeopardy, decides to fight him and recover the much-needed produce. Before a stage, you get a fun little cutscene. They are humorous. It shows this game doesn't take itself too seriously. Unlike Kirby's Adventure, Kirby cannot copy enemy abilities. Instead, he must suck them out into his gut and regurgitate them into other enemies. When he does it, it comes out as stars. By pushing down the D-pad, he can just eat them instead. He can also use air as a weapon too. Can't forget his love of blocks, he can chuck those as well. Along his journey, he will take some hits. There are potions to remedy this. Recognizable villains in other Kirby games make their first appearance in Kirby's Dream Land. Although, I think most of the enemies seem harmless to me, like the birds. They're just minding their own business. Boo, or his distant cousin, ditches the war with Mario and now picks a fight with Kirby. At the end of the level, you fight a stage boss. They are all different. There's a tree that you must shoot his own apples at. After taking a few hits in the face, he gives up. Aw, he has one tear down his eye. That's so sad. After being a stage, Kirby clones himself and has a victory dance. I like the air battle for this boss. Get down, Kirby. Kirby cannot copy abilities, but there are a few power-ups you can find. There's a microphone that Kirby screams in and eliminates all on the screen. There's another power-up that gives Kirby hot air. He just shoots it out for a certain time. It's useful for clearing paths. Kirby takes rides on a star for shortcuts. There is no other way to travel. Mount Dedede, you finally confront King Dedede. But first, you must do an endurance run and fight all the previous bosses again. Before Kirby can even do that, He needs to touch another Kirby. It reminds me of the orb in Castlevania Adventure. You need the orb to fight. You need the Kirby to fight. Like in the Mega Man games, you can choose any order to play first, besides King Dedede. After all 4 are defeated, you finally fight Dedede. You actually fight him in the squared circle. Dedede has a big mouth like Kirby. He'll try to suck you in. He'll also jump in the air and try to elbow drop you. If his flying attack doesn't work, he'll try to use his hammer. Get out of the way, suck up that star, and hit him with it. After a few hits, you will knock him out of the castle. Mama said to knock you out. Mama said to knock you out. And Kirby returns the food. Kirby's Dream Land is a dream come true for the Game Boy. It is a classic. Not as good as the NES Kirby's Adventure. Dreamland is still a great game. It's sort of easy and it's short. Still, it's a wonderful game. One that I highly recommend. This was the perfect way to introduce Kirby to gamers. Kirby has many more appearances on the original Game Boy. Many would say that the follow-up title, Kirby's Dream Land 2, is the better game. Released in 1995, Kirby can copy abilities like in Kirby Adventure. It also introduced Kirby's friends, an owl, a fish, and a hamster. When he's riding with one of his animal friends, Kirby's abilities change what his animal friends can do. Kirby's Dream Land 2 is much harder than the first game. I would say more difficult than Kirby's Adventure. It's a fun game, and one I recommend checking out. Kirby Pinball Land was released in 1983. It is the second Kirby game to be featured on the Game Boy. It's Kirby and Pinball combined. Kirby would appear once again for the Game Boy in 1996 with Kirby's Block Ball. Okay. It's an alleyway breakout clone. So we have a clone of a clone of a clone. It's decent. I would argue it's fun. There are power-ups to change up the game a bit. The very last Kirby game that came out for the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, was the 1997 Kirby Star Stacker. It's a puzzle game. It can be also very addictive. It's a lot of fun. I actually enjoy this one over Kirby's Block Ball. Mario is great on almost any system, but my favorite Mario game of all time is the Game Boy's 6 Golden Coins. Mario and his land returned to the Game Boy in 1982 with Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins. In this game, Mario must reclaim his throne by overthrowing Wario, his first appearance in the Mario universe. Before he confronts that wicked Wario, he must collect 6 golden coins to enter the castle. In general, Super Mario Land was okay, but the sequel is outstanding. Everything's improved upon. The graphics are updated. The sprites are nice and big compared to Super Mario Land. The gameplay is so much better. 6 Golden Coins soundtrack has that Mario sound. Unique to 6 Golden Coins is the Rabbit power-up. With it you can jump higher, plus Mario can fly. Well, sort of. Mario actually descends just very, very slowly. Returning powers from other games are firepower, not super balls, but actual firepower, mushrooms, and Starman. Mario has a spin like in Super Mario World, to break bricks or attack enemies. Super Mario Land was very similar to Super Mario Bros., besides those 2 shooter levels. 6 Golden Coins borrows elements from Super Mario 3, Super Mario World, and its forerunner. There's an overhead map, plus you can replay stages. It even has a shooter type level, but it's more about avoiding obstacles and collecting coins. Like in the original game, there are usually 2 exits at the end of a level. One is slightly harder to get to. After reaching this one, it will give you a bonus minigame where you can get extra lives or power-ups. Besides these 2 examples, it has little to do with anything with the original title. It does have more in common with Super Mario World. This is not a carbon copy. It has its own unique feel, look, and style.
Many of Mario's famous enemies like Koopa Troopas, Bullet Bills, and Goombas appear in the game, along with many new ones like cows, spiky ants, knife in the head hockey mask. Never thought I'd see that in a Mario game, but here it is. There are many more. 6 golden coins takes Mario into 6 different worlds, or zones. Mario can play any one in any order. No 2 zones are the same, and each zone has a specific theme. Tree Zone has enemies that appear in a nature setting.
Like a beehive.
Mario fights enemies while in a honeycomb. This level is weird, but I like it. Mario floats in some gelatin substance. Here, Mario hops along leaves while destroying ants and dodging piranha plants. At the end of the tree zone, Mario takes on a crow-like bird. For each boss, you must hit them in the head 3 times to get the coin they were protecting. The Spootastic Pumpkin Zone is a theme dedicated to October, the month of Halloween. Mario walks through graveyards, fights several Jason Voorhees heads, and tangos with familiar boos. Boos aren't the only ghostly beings to visit Mario. There's even ghastly floating Goombas. At the end of this zone, Mario fights a witch. The Mario Zone is a fun stage to play. I really like the design. It's a toy factory. There's Legoland. This zone has a lot of hazards that put you on your toes, but doesn't interrupt the flow of the gameplay. It adds to the challenge. Mario could take a ride on a ball to avoid spikes. Mario obviously loves crane games and decides to be a prize himself in this stage. Doesn't that hurt Mario? Mario must fight the 3 little pigs in order to get the coin. The one of straw rolls on the ground. The one of stick jumps barely above the ground. The pig of brick jumps the highest and wider. 3 hits for each, and you'll earn the coin. Can't forget the Space Zone. You can reach it by going to the hippo and going into this mini stage. You must find the hippo and ride the bubble. It can pop, but you can easily find another hippo with a bubble. After reaching the end of this stage, you'll be taken to the Space Zone. The Space Zone is one of the shortest zones in the game. At the end, it has a recognizable villain.
The mysterious vile space fiend Tatanga!
Ah, he's out for revenge. The Turtle Zone has underwater stages. Mario, attempting to one-up Jonah, enters a live whale to recover a coin from an octopus. The Macro Zone, or Honey, I Shrunk the Mario stage, has our protagonist and a smaller statue fighting enemies now just his size. At the end, our beloved hero fights a rat for a coin. After getting all 6 coins, Mario enters the castle. The castle is full of nasty little surprises. Fire-spitting piranha plants. Disappearing skull platforms. Platforms that move you up towards spikes. Spiral rotating spikes. Several warrior orbs. After all that, you can finally confront Wario. You have to defeat him 3 different times. Each time, Wario will upgrade his powers. After the 3rd time, Wario cries and Mario gets his castle back.
6 golden coins, in my opinion, I'm gonna say it, it's a masterpiece.
This is by far my favorite Mario game of all time, even surpassing Mario 3 in Mario World. The Bunny Mario, the levels, the gameplay, all add to a perfect Mario game, not just for the Game Boy, but for any system.
Wario Land had its own series on the Game Boy. Wario Land, or Super Mario Land 3, even had a follow-up, Wario Land 2, dropping the Super Mario Land moniker. Wario also was in another game, Wario Blast, featuring the Bomberman himself. It's kind of like a Bomberman-like game. We don't have time to really discuss these, but I just want to let you know, here they are. Well, that's the Game Boy. We look at the hardware, launch titles, and games. Many different genres. We looked at over 100 titles. There's so much more to dive into with this little guy. You know, it's sad that this little guy doesn't get as much love as it should. I hope I showed why I love the Game Boy. Hope you found the video entertaining. Maybe you learned something. Maybe some games you want to check out. There's so many more games to look into, and I don't have time to do it in this Director's Cut video, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. That's why part 2's coming. Hopefully, soon. Well guys, thank you so much for watching. Have fun. Go game, especially on the Game Boy. See you next time. So it'd be totally rad, man. Pick yourself a Game Boy and a game pack, and you have portable power. Hey, while you're playing some Game Boy games, don't forget your Game Player Strategy Guide for Game Boy games. Here's a DuckTales issue. Can't go wrong with that. Wait a minute, we didn't really talk about the Game & Watch. Well, I guess here's a partial Game & Watch.
What's cool about the Game & Watch gallery, it actually has 4 games from the Game & Watch series. Manhole, Fire, Octopus, and Oil Panic.
There's 2 different modes. You can go from the Nintendo to Nintendo. That doesn't make any sense.
You can play the originals, they're called Classic, or you can do the modern versions of them. Instead of the generic characters, you might have Yoshi or Toad. In Manhole, your object is to help people cross the path safely. You have to plug in the blank spaces. If they fall in, they get mad, and you can only miss so many. In Fire, people are hopping out of a burning building, and you, just like those old 1940s cartoons, have a stretcher and you help them bounce into an ambulance. You can only miss so many. In Modern, the castle's on fire, and you help Toad hop across into a Toad caravan instead of an ambulance.
Octopus, retrieve the sunken treasure and don't get grabbed by that stinking octopus. And lastly, Oil Panic. Catch that dripping oil. You can go classic or updated with Mario characters. The Game & Watch Gallery, 4 games in 1. I hope you like the director's cut with the new content and everything as well. I enjoyed making it. And pretty much that's the Game Boy.